The third generation of the Dark Lord comes from Hogwarts. Chapter 21. Also using the deformation technique. You can only make the shape of an object change. For example, last night against Alexia, she turned broken wood into birds and buttons into poisonous snakes. It looks similar to Professor McGonagall, but Argus knows it. Nothing changes in the nature of the object. Wood is still wood, and buttons are still buttons. But in the hands of Professor McGonagall, the pig transformed from the desk seemed to have a soul. There is no difference between the expression and movement of an ordinary pig. Argus' thoughtful eyes caught Professor McGonagall's attention. Compared with the surprise of other freshmen, she admires students like Yagus who can find problems and think in details. It's a pity that she's not just Argus's teacher. As the professor of transfiguration at Hogwarts, her first priority is to take care of the progress and ideas of most students. Okay, little wizards. Transfiguration is far more mysterious than you think. Now, open your textbook. What we are going to learn today is how to turn a match into a silver needle. Professor McGonagall gave everyone a match in turn and demonstrated to everyone according to the content in the textbook. Including the gesture of casting the spell, the angle and strength of the wand waving, etc. Only after confirming that all new students have mastered it can they feel free to let them try it on their own. The next task for you is to turn the match in your hand into a silver needle. Don't be anxious, think through the steps and sequence. As soon as he finished speaking, the new student, who had been eager for a long time, couldn't wait to take out his magic wand and wave it at the match in front of him. It's a pity that no matter how they wave or use the little magic they have learned, there is no change in the matches. Agus, please help me see why I can't do anything with my wand. Merlin's flowery pants. What are you doing? Draco, who was trying in vain, turned to look at Argus, only to see that the silver needles on the opponent's table were constantly changing into various shapes. One is the silver needle, the other is the piglet. What is shocking is that the pig's body cannot completely transform, and the limbs of a pig body are actually 4 slender silver needles. Yagos. When Professor McGonagall saw it, she was startled and broke into a cold sweat. With a flick of the wand, all the transformation spells on the match were dispelled. Yagus was relieved and was about to explain something when Professor McGonagall's serious voice sounded in his ears. Yagos, have you forgotten what I just said? No trick-or-treating allowed in my class. I'm sorry, Professor. Yagus bowed his head and admitted his mistake. I have completed the task you assigned. I am just practicing how to transform the desk into a real pig like you. Real pig. Professor McGonagall was keenly aware of the meaning of Yagus's words. There was a hint of surprise in his eyes. Yes, I once turned wood into a flying bird, but later I discovered that it only changed its shape. The body is still wood, and I cannot give it life like you can. Mr. Grindelwald, your talent for transfiguration is even better than I imagined. Professor McGonagall had originally thought that Argus's talent for transfiguration would be 70% to 80% that of Charm's, and she would have been satisfied. After all, human energy is limited and it is impossible to be perfect in all aspects. I never thought that Yagus would be exposed to the nature of transformation and even the level of the soul in just the first grade. Her angry expression gradually softened, and she put the wand back into her sleeve. Shang Yagus answered. As for the question you mentioned, it involves a key aspect of transfiguration. A change in the nature of an object. Nature. That's right, the prerequisite for turning wood into flesh is that you have to understand the essential changes between the two. This is something only advanced transfiguration techniques can touch. It's still too early for you at this stage. You can try to turn wood into stone or iron first. This will be much easier for you. I understand, Professor McGonagall. Thank you for your advice. At this moment, Professor McGonagall looked at Yagus like a top craftsman looking at a perfect piece of jade. I simply can't suppress my desire to carve. If you are willing, you can come to the Transfiguration Club every Sunday morning to study. I will explain the essential content to you in detail. Of course, thank you very much for your advice. There is one more thing I want to remind you, Mr. Grindelwald. Professor McGonagall changed the subject and her tone became serious again. Because of your behavior of disobeying classroom discipline, I have to deduct 5 points from Slytherin as a warning. As for your beautiful transformation. She raised the corners of her mouth slightly and announced to everyone. 5 points for Slytherin. A fair verdict. Argus smiled slightly and agreed with Professor McGonagall's approach. Work is work, mistakes are mistakes, rewards and punishments are clear. No wonder he became the obvious choice for the future headmaster of Hogwarts. Mr. Grindelwald, if you don't mind, could you please help other young wizards complete the tasks for this lesson? My pleasure. Professor McGonagall. The Slytherin crowd burst into cheers, and Draco eagerly pulled Argus to his side. Yagos, come and help me. Why do my matches always disobey? You try it and I'll see. With Argus watching, Draco waved his wand and tried again. Stop. I know what your problem is. Where? Draco, you have to know that the power of magic comes from your heart to a large extent. It will only change if you think it is a silver needle from the bottom of your heart. Argus patiently explained to Draco, taking out his wand and demonstrating over and over again. The new students of Slytherin surrounded the two of them and asked them one by one about the problems they encountered when casting spells. With the help of Argus, everyone in Slytherin made rapid progress. Pansy, Daphne, Theodore and others who are progressing relatively quickly have a tendency to make their matches sharper. Some freshmen from Gryffindor looked at their matches with no progress and hesitated for a while. Niunu came to Yagus and asked. Yagus didn't care and treated the students from both houses equally. While gaining the friendship of Gryffindor, he also received the praise of Professor McGonagall. Harry wanted to ask Argus for help, but Ron was extremely disgusted with this suggestion. Harry, do you believe Slytherin's lies? They are always so hypocritical. They pretend to give you guidance on the surface, but in fact they have cursed you countless times in their hearts. His father is a dark wizard, so he must be too. Seamus, am I right? Ah, yes, yes. Simo, who had just returned from seeking advice from Yagus, didn't want to talk to him at all. I didn't even hear what he said clearly, so I nodded casually. After one class, with the help of Yagus, the matches in the hands of most students had obvious changes. No matter how bad it is, a section of the match can be sharpened. Just Harry and Ron. The two matches remained motionless. Hogwarts Castle Escalator. The new students in Slytherin were very excited. Not only because of Argus's first extra point, but more importantly, Gryffindor, as Slytherin's old enemy, actually took the initiative to ask Argus for advice. There's more than one person. This greatly satisfies their vanity. Everyone was chattering and walking in front of Gryffindor in an arrogant manner. Okay, just say a few words less. We are classmates and future partners. It's just a class. We shouldn't still talk about it now, right? Yagus reminded helplessly. This was the third time Draco described Gryffindor's awkward expression. After repeating it twice, I can almost memorize it. Yagos, you haven't seen it. Those little lions want to say thank you but are embarrassed. It's really funny. Draco was about to describe the scene just now to Argus when a strange figure suddenly appeared above his head. It startled him. He, guess what I saw? Gryffindor and Slytherin actually walked together. Ha ha ha. A strange transparent figure emerged from the wall above everyone's heads. Wearing bright clothes and a hat. The tattered slippers had long cracks, exposing a few dark toes. While laughing, he threw the water balloon in his hand at everyone. Protect them all. Yagus reacted quickly and blocked everyone with a transparent barrier. Water droplets splashed, but they did not hit the Slytherins. The little lion cub behind them was not so lucky. Seeing that Slytherin's attack was ineffective, Peeves smiled evilly and threw water balloons at the little lions. This caused the little lions to yell. Peeves, get away. I'm going to tell Professor McGonagall. Let her teach you a lesson. Yagus frowned slightly. Peeves is recorded in Hogwarts, a school history. In 1876, the administrator of Hogwarts tried to use various weapons and spells to expel Peeves from Hogwarts. In the end, it escaped easily. Not only that, Peeves even stole a shotgun and a small cannon. Shooting randomly in the school almost caused a big incident. Finally, the principal gave Peeves the privilege of causing trouble, and the incident was brought to an end. Yagus didn't want to have a headache with such a difficult devil. Go quickly, don't stay. When we get to the potions classroom, Peeves won't dare to cause trouble. He stretched the barrier above his head to the maximum to protect as many people as possible. Ah! A scream from behind instantly attracted everyone's attention. Argus looked back and saw that a girl at the end of the Gryffindor team was avoiding the water polo, but she didn't notice that the stairs had quietly rotated. I accidentally fell down the stairs. Someone, come quickly. Another Gryffindor girl grabbed her arm tightly. But she is too weak on her own. Within 2 seconds, the whole body began to shake. People around wanted to pull her, but it was still a step too late. The girl's body plummeted. At this moment, a quick male voice sounded. Wingardium Leviosa. The falling girl was dragged by an invisible force and slowly floated upward. Yagus ran a few steps quickly, controlled the girl to float to the stairs, and caught her the moment the spell was lifted. You're not hurt. The girl who had closed her eyes tightly and waited quietly for death heard Yagus's voice and jumped up. His eyes were red, his legs were limp and he sat on the ground. Parvati. The girl who had held her earlier had tears on her face and hurried over and took Parvati into her arms. Only then did Yagus see that the two men looked almost exactly the same. No, Parvati. The Gryffindor flower from India in the original book. Yagus' pupils narrowed and he looked at the other party with interest. He is also a supporting character with many scenes. In the original book, Parvati served as Harry's dance partner at the Triwizard Tournament ball. It's just that my rescue today. It's not certain whether the other party will still like him in the future. Padma, I'm fine. Thank you, Mr. Grindelwald. Parvati stood up staggeringly, bowed deeply to Yagus and thanked him. Padma beside her also reacted and gave Yagus a deep hug. If my sister really dies because of this, I don't want to live anymore. Mr. Grindelwald, Padma will never forget your kindness. It takes a little effort, but I can't bear to see a beautiful little girl die in front of my eyes. Argus patted Padma's back gently in reassurance. Wow, have you seen it? Yagus' reaction is really fast. I didn't even see the person clearly, and his magic spell had already flown out. Yes. Fortunately he is here, otherwise Parvati would definitely fall. If you fall from such a high building, you won't be bruised and bruised. The little Gryffindor lion let out bursts of praise. First, he ignored the struggle between Slytherin and Gryffindor and taught them everything in the Transfiguration class. Now they save their classmates at the critical moment. No matter how much these little lions hate Slytherin, they have to sincerely like this chief. Oh my god. Peeves, what have you done? Professor McGonagall, who arrived belatedly, was like an angry lioness, taking out her wand and pointing it at Peeves. Peeves knew that he had almost caused disaster, so he hurriedly got into the wall and escaped. Seeing Parvati in an extremely embarrassed state, Professor McGonagall was frightened and quickly stepped forward to her side. Miss Potter, how are you feeling? I'll take you to Madame Pomfrey's to check it out. Peeves has gone too far this time. I must ask Professor Dumbledore to discipline him. Professor, I'm fine. Mr. Grindelwald saved me. Parvati briefly recounted what had just happened. Professor McGonagall looked at Argus with even more admiration. Mr. Grindelwald, on behalf of Gryffindor, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to you for your help at this critical moment. In view of your brave actions, I decided to add 20 points to Slytherin. 20 points. There were waves of exclamation from the crowd. You know, even if you win the Quidditch championship, it will only add 150 points. It is still the result of a large group of people working day and night for a whole school year. And Argus, in just one class, scored a high score of 25 points for Slytherin. Although the score was high, no one felt inappropriate about it. Everyone knows that Yagus deserves this. Okay, little wizards, class time is coming soon. If you don't want your Professor Snape to get angry, just hurry up and get there. Professor McGonagall turned her head and looked at Parvati. Although the other party said that she was fine, for safety reasons, she still planned to take her to Madame Pomfrey's place. Parvati glanced at Yagus in the crowd reluctantly. Amid the good-natured cheers of a group of people, they helplessly watched Yagus and others leave. The potions classroom at Hogwarts is located at the bottom of the entire castle. The eerie atmosphere, coupled with Snape's own low pressure. No one in the entire classroom dared to breathe loudly. Even Ron, who usually likes to chirp the most, became like a quail. Boom. There was a sudden muffled sound at the door. Snape strode into the classroom. With the wave of his wand, the classroom windows closed one after another. The already dark classroom seemed even more claustrophobic. In my class, you are not allowed to wave your magic wand or recite spells. I don't think many of you appreciate the profound science and precise craftsmanship of potions. Since there is no silly waving of wands here, many of you will not believe this is magic. I don't expect you to truly appreciate the beauty of the slow simmering cauldron emitting white smoke and bursting with fragrance. You also don't really understand the liquid that flows into people's blood vessels, the kind of magical power that makes people feel fascinated and confused. I can teach you how to increase your reputation, brew glory, and even prevent death, but there must be one thing, that is, you are not the stupid fool I often encounter. As the only professor at Hogwarts who can use PPT, Snape's teaching method is extremely advanced. He placed one hand on the podium and his hawk-like eyes flashed over the heads of the new students in the classroom. Finally, I stopped at a classmate who was writing and drawing. Then again, maybe some of you already had extraordinary abilities when you came to Hogwarts, and you were confident enough to think. Okay. No. Pay attention. Listen. My class. Without Hermione's reminder in the original book, Harry never noticed the murderous look in Snape's eyes. Silently, I continued to write my own things. Until Snape walked up to him. Mr. Potter. Harry was startled when his name was suddenly called. It caused laughter in the classroom. Snape stared into Harry's eyes. Mr. Savior, tell me, what would happen if I added Narcissus bulb powder to the absinthe stem liquid? I'm coming. Classic fragments from the original Harry Potter books. It is also one of the most hidden hints. Snape's confession. Yagus watched the scene in front of him with great interest, and even regretted why he didn't bring some melon seeds and peanuts. Harry shook his head. Don't know. Snape snorted contemptuously. Then let me ask you something else. Mr. Potter, if I get a bezoar, where should I look for it? I don't know, Professor. What's the difference between Aconitum aconite and Aconitum lupus? No. Don't know. Snape smiled sarcastically. Obviously, fame is not everything. Correct, Mr. Potter. I'm not the only one who doesn't know the answers to these questions. Harry was extremely unhappy with Snape's difficulty and retorted, looking directly into Snape's eyes. Really? Snape sneered and turned to look at Argos, whose mouth was harder to press than AK. Mr. Grindelwald, please answer the question I just asked for our savior. I knew it. The water of life and death is an advanced medicine that I only started to learn about in the 6th grade. You wouldn't be able to answer it if it were anyone else. Yagus stood up and answered respectfully. The powder of Narcissus root ball is added to the liquid of absinthe stems, and after heating, it will produce the decoction of living hell, also called the water of life and death. Bezoars can be found in goats' stomachs. Aconitum scapulae and Aconitum wolfsbane are the same thing, they just have different names. Snape didn't even turn around. There was a coldness in his tone. I only remind you once, Mr. Grindelwald. If you dare to show that troll-like smile in my class again, I won't mind kicking you out of the classroom. Sit down. 5 points for Slytherin. Also, Mr. Potter, 5 points will be deducted from Gryffindor for your ignorance and rude behavior. Harry's eyes showed anger, but Snape ignored him, turned around, and glanced around. The tone became increasingly cold. You guys, why don't you write down the answers just now? The sound of quill rubbing against parchment was heard instantly. Anyone with a bit of discernment could see that Snape was in an extremely unhappy mood. No one wants to get into trouble with him at this time. Potions class continues. After Snape taught a series of steps such as how to handle dried nettles and crush snake fangs. Divide all students into pairs. It's just that Slytherin is still Slytherin, and Gryffindor's teammates are still Gryffindors. But for some reason, Yagus always had an ominous premonition when he looked at Seamus and Ron together. Although Neville was assigned to Hufflepuff, Neville's mistake in the original plot that caused the potion to spill cannot happen again. But with Seamus here, Yagus thought for a moment, then pulled his teammate Draco and hid in the corner of the classroom. Draco was puzzled, but didn't ask any more questions. The scabies potion is not a complicated potion, and he can easily complete it even without Yagus. The two have a clear division of labor and carry out one task after another in an orderly manner. Oh. It seems that our chief Slytherin is not as helpful as rumored. Snape, who was patrolling among the students, saw Argus and Draco hiding in a corner of the classroom. He didn't hide his ridicule. I just want to give the opportunity to be mentored to other students who need it more. HMPH. Snape laughed mockingly. The already stiff face looked even more terrifying. But the next second, he couldn't laugh anymore. A violent explosion sounded. Green acidic potion splashed everywhere. And, right next to him. Zitza. The acidic potion made a harsh corrosive sound as it fell to the ground. Many students nearby were accidentally injured. Snape, who was the closest, was the first to bear the brunt. Idiot. He flicked his sleeves and covered his neck where he was jumped, and his angry roar almost deafened Yagis's ears. However, things are far from over. Because of the explosion, many students accidentally knocked over their crucibles while dodging. Even the flames on the cauldron spread. Most of the tables and chairs in Hogwarts classrooms are made of wood, which burn quickly under the catalysis of flames. The whole classroom was in chaos. Clear water like a spring. A stream of water rushed from the distance and quickly extinguished the surrounding flames. Immediately afterwards, there was another magic spell, which cleaned up the debris on the table and the ground. Cleaned up. Everyone's eyes turned to the direction from which the sound came. I saw that Yagis had just put away his wand and was walking towards them quickly. Students who are not injured first help take the injured to the school doctor's office. Students who are able can simply help clean up the classroom with clear spring water. Under Yagis's reminder, everyone woke up from a dream. Hurry to help the injured classmates. Yagis was filled with joy. I knew something was going to happen. Even if Neville is not here, Ron, Seamus, and Harry are all troublemakers. If we weren't far away, maybe I would be implicated too. Just like Snape. Mr. Grindelwald, if you dare to stare at me with that disgusting look again, I won't mind digging out 2 of your eyeballs. Snape's face was so gloomy that he could shed tears. His eyes were fixed on the culprit of this incident. Mr. Weasley, Mr. Finnegan, I think you need to find a reasonable explanation for your stupid behavior. Originally it was supposed to be Neville and Seamus, and Harry and Ron. But Neville was now assigned to Hufflepuff, and Ron saw Snape targeting Harry like this. Out of fear, he chose to team up with Seamus. Harry was with their other roommate. But is Seamus' title as a demolition genius a lie? He and Ron, who combined had never read a page of the potions textbook, relied on their own intuition to mess around. Detonate the crucible directly. Not only did he get scabies all over his body, but he also screamed in pain. It also affected many people around me. Even Snape, who had planned to find trouble with Harry, was accidentally injured by them. A large number of scars appeared on the neck hidden under the black robe. Mr. Weasley and Mr. Finnegan, 10 points from Gryffindor for your outstanding actions. Why don't you send these 2 idiots to the school doctor's office quickly? There was an unprecedented coldness in Snape's tone. Then, he looked at Harry, who was closest to the 2 of them. Mr. Potter, you are so close, why don't you stop the 2 of them from doing something wrong? Harry. What does it have to do with me? Who did I provoke? Do you think that the stupid behavior of your classmates can highlight the excellence of your savior? Because of your little thoughts, another 5 points will be deducted from Gryffindor. Harry was completely confused. He wanted to refute, but looking at Ron and Seamus who were wailing in pain, he gritted his teeth and chose to send them to the school doctor's office first. The first potions class ended dramatically under the torture of Ron and Seamus. On the first day, Gryffindor was deducted several points for being the protagonist. Looking at the frustrated Harry, Argus sighed. If you want to blame me, I blame you for giving birth to a boy. If you were a girl, I think Snape could solo Voldemort. Argus could think of what would happen if Harry turned into Harry with the lower part of his head. Snape. Miss Potter, what would happen if I added Narcissus bulb powder to the absinthe stem liquid? Harley. I don't know. Snape. Oh, 5 points from Gryffindor for your honesty. Go all the way to the lobby. The curriculum at Hogwarts is similar to that of the university in Argus's previous life. Mainly large classes, usually 1.5 to 2 hours. It was already noon when the 2 classes ended. Because he came from the bottom of Hogwarts Castle, when Argus came to the hall, there were already many people sitting on the long tables of the 4 colleges. Seeing him coming, Hermione waved her arms happily. Yagos. Smart Miss Granger, I heard from my friend that you gained a lot of points for Ravenclaw House in Charms class today. Since the results of last night's battle had been shown to everyone at Hogwarts in the morning, Argus did not need to sit in the chief position as a reminder. He went straight to the Ravenclaw table and sat down next to Hermione. Many little Ravenclaw girls saw Argus arriving and subconsciously arranged their clothes. He moved his position towards Yagus without leaving any trace. A flash of pride flashed in Hermione's eyes, then she thought of something and showed an annoyed expression. But in our first potions class, Professor Snape not only didn't give me any extra points. He even gave me a lesson. He said I. Miss Granger, do you think you are much smarter than others? Use your raised hands to show that you are different. Argus imitated Snape's usual cadence, causing Hermione to punch him in the face. The two chatted while eating. At this time, a burst of birdsong came from the ceiling. A large group of owls flew in with various letters and gifts. Chirp, chirp. 2 rolls of newspapers were thrown in front of Argus, attracting Hermione's attention. Yagos, do you still read these? I thought you. Do you think I have to carry textbooks every day besides memorizing them? Argus' suggestion made Hermione blush slightly. Ever since she knew that Argus could memorize the knowledge in the 3rd grade textbook, Hermione felt a sense of crisis in her heart. In addition to eating and going to class, I also read textbooks before going to bed. As Yagus swallowed the last bite of food, a piece of news in the newspaper caught his attention. Gringotts was attacked. Suspected to be the work of a dark wizard. The goblins of Gringotts have repeatedly stressed that nothing was stolen. Voldemort finally takes action. Yagus's eyes flashed. He had been waiting for this moment for too long. Compared to Dumbledore's obstruction and the British Ministry of Magic's fear, he wanted Voldemort to be resurrected as soon as possible. Use his terror to attract firepower and buy time for the development of the Saints. After all, compared to the living Dark Lord who is still in his prime, the combination of a young wizard who has not yet reached adulthood and a group of old, weak, sick and disabled is simply nothing. As long as he is alive, the eyes of Dumbledore and the Ministry of Magic of various countries will not be fixed on him. However, Yagus does not intend for his resurrection to be as smooth as the original. Resurrection is possible, but it must be under your control. In addition, Gringotts' actions are also an extremely important part of his plan. One of Voldemort's Horcruxes, Hufflepuff's Golden Cup, is hidden in Gringotts Lestrange's treasury. Neither Voldemort nor Dumbledore would ever give up. As long as they learn this news, they will definitely choose to take action against Gringotts. Perhaps one attack would not shake the wizard's confidence in Gringotts, but what about the second? What about the 3rd or 4th time? The attacks happened again and again, and Gringotts had no room for resistance. What wizard would safely deposit money there? Even if Gringotts repeatedly claimed that nothing was stolen, who would believe it? Yagus has been coveting the Golden Mountain of the Wizarding World Bank for many years. Now is the best opportunity. It's not that Yagus didn't want to get Hufflepuff's Golden Cup in advance, but Gringotts has been standing in the wizarding world for many years, and it's not something he can easily break. Moreover, the Lestrange treasury was enchanted, making it difficult to break into. If you want to find a cup among a large pile of gold, only Harry or Voldemort himself, who is also a Horcrux, can do it. Rather than spending a lot of time and energy, it is better to choose another Horcrux. At the same time, Harry also saw the news in Ron's newspaper. But his focus was more on the vault that was attacked. Without a think tank, the duo made random guesses like headless flies, but could never find any ideas. In the blink of an eye it was already afternoon. Draco was like a stray dog, and without waiting for Argus, he took Goyle and Crabbe and ran outside. Did he drink too much? The first period in the afternoon is flying lesson. Draco has been looking forward to it for a long time. Pansy shook her head helplessly. Like Argus, she is one of the few people who is not interested in Quidditch. Of course, the enjoyment of flying is much less. No wonder. Argus shook his head helplessly and followed the Slytherins to the flying class venue. Mrs. Hooch is a woman with eagle eyes. The neat short hair and golden pupils show the sharpness of her character. She is not only the flying professor at Hogwarts, but also the referee of Quidditch matches. Good afternoon, classmates. Good afternoon, Mrs. Hooch. Mrs. Hooch walked quickly through the crowd of Slytherins and Gryffindors. The first lesson begins now. What are you waiting for? Everyone stand to the left of the broomstick. Action. Move quickly. Most of the freshmen came into contact with flying broomsticks for the first time. They stood on the left side as instructed by Mrs. Hooch. Argus still doesn't understand why Hogwarts makes flying lessons compulsory. If it were placed hundreds of years ago, when technology had not yet developed, that would be fine. Now, magic buses are in use, and everyone in the Ministry of Magic knows how to use the elevator. Why do you have to fly around on a broomstick? Unfortunately, most students are very enthusiastic about flying broomsticks. Even if Yagus doesn't like it, he can't get the school to change it for him. After everyone stood up, Mrs. Hooch continued to speak. Put your hands on the top right side of the broom and say, "Get up." Stand up. Stand up. The word, "get up," is written all over the lawn. Harry was the first to let the broom fly up, and with just a cry, the broom flew into the palm of his hand. Draco followed. Yagus's sudden discovery. When it comes to adding talent points to your own system, it seems that there is no such thing as flying talent. No matter how loud his voice was about to smoke, the broom under his feet did not move at all. Seeing the classmates around him waking up the brooms in their hands one after another, Yagus had to accept a fact. He may be the first student in the history of Hogwarts who cannot use a broomstick. But that's okay, I will have an excuse to skip classes and go to the library for more time in the future. Mr. Grindelwald, you. Mrs. Hooch looked strange. It seems that he did not expect that this talented student who was praised by countless professors would turn out like this in front of him. As you can see, Mrs. Hooch. Yagus spread his hands and said that he had tried his best. I don't seem to have any talent for flying. Poor child. Don't be upset about this, there has been more than one case like this in the UK. Mrs. Hooch sighed and touched Argus' head sympathetically. If you don't mind, take a rest on the lawn first. I will discuss with Professor Snape later and allow you to attend other classes during flying class time. Thank you for your comfort, Mrs. Hooch. Yagus's expression was indifferent, and he could even see a little bit of disappointment. In fact, I am already happy inside. It's a blessing in disguise, but it's not a blessing. I was originally thinking about how to talk to Mrs. Hooch to skip class, but she ended up showing up at my door. Well, you go and have a rest first. Mrs. Hooch let out a long sigh, which attracted countless sympathetic looks to Yagus. For most students, life without the use of a broomstick is simply unimaginable. Yagus didn't care. I happily ran to the lawn and lay down, took out my 5th grade potions textbook, and enjoyed the warm sunbath. Everyone. Quiet. Now, grab your broomsticks and ride on. Hold on, don't slide down. As soon as I blow the whistle, you will kick off hard and fly into the air. There was no accident with Neville, and there was no quarrel between Draco and Harry. This flying lesson went extremely smoothly. Mrs. Hooch looked at the little wizard hovering in the air with satisfaction. Students, now I am going to the castle to get some things. You can feel the fun of flying freely on this lawn. Remember, only on this lawn. If anyone dares to cross the castle, I won't spare him. As soon as he finished speaking, many young wizards happily started various flying competitions. The two Parvati sisters were riding broomsticks, wandering unsteadily not far from Argos. There was worry in his eyes. Yagos, are you okay? Yagus, who was reading a book, looked towards the two of them. They seemed to suddenly remember something and jumped off the broom in a hurry. Slow down, be careful not to fall. Yagus closed the book and cast a levitating spell on the two of them to help them stabilize their bodies. I'm fine. If you can't ride a broomstick, then you can't ride it. At worst, you should learn to apparate early. Hogwarts can't persuade me to leave just because I can't ride a broomstick. Pooch. The two girls were amused by Yagus's joke. You are the treasure of the professors, and they will not let you go. Parvati's eyes sparkled with little stars. The girl Waichun, at this age when her love affair was just beginning, the perfect image of Yagus was deeply imprinted in her mind. Meanwhile, many people recalled the help Yagus had given them that morning. Thinking that the other person was feeling sad because he couldn't use the broomstick, he was flying unscrupulously in front of him. A pang of guilt welled up. He quietly lowered his altitude and flew in the direction of Yagus. Argus, it's okay if you can't ride a broomstick. There's flow powder for long distances, and apparition for short distances. It won't hinder your daily life. Yeah, and a broomstick can't protect you from wind and rain. If it suddenly rains heavily while you're in the sky, you won't even have a chance to take shelter. My uncle's friend encountered this situation last time and was almost struck down by lightning. Everyone comforted Yagis in their own way. Show him your kindness. This scene fell in Ron's eyes and made him go crazy with jealousy. Why? Why do I get complaints and accusations when I make mistakes in the morning? Your turn is a comfort to so many people. What was even more unacceptable to him was that a large number of these people were members of Gryffindor. He couldn't help but curse under his breath. Traitors, a bunch of Gryffindor traitors. What potion did that evil Slytherin give you? Weasley. What did you say? When Draco heard this, he became angry on the spot, threw the broom away and walked towards Ron. Isn't what I said the truth? Ron's anger also rose. The conflict between him and Yagis started on the train. Also a new student, Argus could attract the attention and respect of countless people, but he could only stay by Harry's side. The first thing everyone thinks of when mentioning him is that he is Harry's friend. Especially after today's class, the students' attitudes towards the two were compared. The jealousy in his heart had reached its peak. Now he finally had the opportunity to mock Yagis, how could he let it go? What Ron didn't expect was that his words not only failed to gain recognition from others, but instead attracted countless disgusted looks. Even Harry stood in front of him dissatisfied. Ron, Argus is Gryffindor's friend. He saved our classmates. Who knows if he deliberately stood up and pretended to be a nice guy. Yagis smiled slightly and ignored him. Soothing other angry little wizards. What adult would get angry with a child? He's just a little kid looking for attention, and Yagis doesn't have that much time to deal with or train him. Let Dumbledore and Harry have the headache. Argus's flat gaze did not dissipate Ron's resentment, but instead aroused his inner inferiority. His flushed face was almost the same color as his hair. His expression was twisted with jealousy. Ignoring Harry's obstruction, he rushed towards Argus on his broomstick. Ron snatched away the textbook that Yagis had placed on the ground. Riding on a broomstick with a proud expression. It seems that taking something away from Yagis is something to be proud of. Mr. Weasley, I advise you to put your things down. Otherwise, I guarantee you will regret what you did. Yagis's cold words sounded. He didn't want to be like a child, but the other person repeatedly kicked him in the face. Don't blame him for being rude. Ron shuddered and shrank back in fear. But when he thought of so many people looking at him, he gritted his teeth and held on for the sake of face. Who cares about a broken book? Come and get it yourself if you can. After saying that, he immediately rode his broom and flew away into the distance. Weasley, stop. Draco picked up his broom and chased after him. With the blessing of inner anger, and Draco's own flying talent is superior to Ron. Even if he was half a beat slower, he quickly caught up with Ron. Weasley, you really bring shame on your family. Shut up, Malfoy. Your father is a Death Eater, and you will definitely be one in the future. You are just as disgusting as that friend of yours. What did you say? Say it again if you can. A dark wizard's friend is also a dark wizard. You are all not good. Draco's face turned red with anger, and he rushed in Ron's direction desperately. The two of them chased after each other, completely forgetting Mrs. Hooch's previous instructions. Flying higher and higher, it is already a long way beyond the castle. But Draco's flying talent was much better than Ron's, and among students in his grade, only Harry could beat him. After a while, Draco was chasing behind Ron, reaching for his shoulder. Weasley, stop now. Ron struggled hard, the two were in a stalemate, and the two broomsticks were crumbling. The students watching below exclaimed in surprise. Yagos, nothing will happen to them, right? As Draco's future sister-in-law, Daphne looked worriedly at the two men in the air. Yagis's eyes were cold and his tone was filled with strong confidence. As long as I'm here, nothing will happen. In fact, his impression of the Weasley family is not bad. In the original work, the members of the Weasley family are perfect in both talent and strength. Charlie raises a dragon, Molly kills Bella with 3 silent spells, and Percy defeats the puppet minister of the Ministry of Magic. Except for Ron, almost all the family members are top talents. Ron's talent is not bad, but it is inferior to that of his brothers and sisters. Otherwise, it would be impossible to become a Gryffindor prefect in the future. Unfortunately, jealousy is too strong. This can be seen from the fact that he had a cold war with Harry because he was jealous that Harry could participate in the Triwizard Tournament. I can't control you for being jealous, Harry. How dare you mess with me? If I don't teach you a lesson, do you really think of me as a soft persimmon? Yagus used the wide cuffs of the wizard's robe to quietly hide the wand he took out. Looking directly at the two Dracos on the broomstick. Above midair, Ron twisted left and right, trying to get rid of Draco. But Draco seemed to be glued to him. Not only did the distance not widen, but it actually got closer and closer. Ron had just entered school and did not dare to disobey Mrs. Hooch's orders. Especially when points have already been deducted in the morning. He could only wander around the castle, trying his best to avoid Draco's pursuit. Evil Slytherin. Don't let me find a chance, otherwise. Weasley, do you think you can escape? While Ron was still chattering, Draco chased him from below the castle. There was a loud shout that scared Ron so much that his hand slipped and he almost fell off the broom. By the time he balanced the broom again, Draco was close at hand. The two shuttled back and forth in midair. Seeing that he couldn't get rid of Draco, Ron simply threw Argus's book away. Stopping in midair, looking at Draco provocatively. Chasing, if you have the ability, keep chasing. Asshole. Draco looked at the book that was blown by the wind, glared at Ron fiercely, turned and chased in the direction of the book. Slytherin's green robe turned into a stream of light, and even though the brooms at Hogwarts had been out of date for many years, they could not conceal Draco's amazing talent. Just at the moment Draco was about to catch it. Suddenly there was a soft sound from the broomstick. Turn out to be. The brooms at Hogwarts have been used by countless generations of students and have become obsolete. How can it withstand such a violent flight? The broom broke in the middle. Draco fell straight down. The speed is getting faster and faster. On the lawn, countless people were panicked. At such a fast speed, if it touches the ground directly, anyone who thinks about it will know the consequences. Either dead or injured. Transform quickly. At the critical moment, Yagus's spell was released in time. Boom. At the last moment, the grass on the ground turned into mattresses. Before Draco landed, he slowed down his impact. Even so, Draco was beaten to pieces. Yagus's eyes were cold, staring straight at Ron in midair. While taking the wand back, cast the spell again. Strengthen the energy to release it. The sound is extremely small, and the force exerted by the force itself is a curse repellent, used to eliminate the power constraints on the body. No sound shines. A direct hit on Ron's broomstick. Whoosh. The broomstick under Ron's butt seemed to suddenly malfunction, and he fell straight from the sky. Unlike Draco, he had Argus to help cushion the impact. Boom. There was a burst of dust and Ron fell to the ground, his arms and legs showing strange shapes. Howl of pain. Yagus sneered without even looking at him. Come to Draco. How do you feel? Don't move, I'll take you to Madame Pomfrey's place. Draco raised his head in confusion and saw Argus with a smile on his face. He reached out and handed over the book he was holding tightly in his arms. Yagos, your book. You. Yagus wanted to get angry, but looking at Draco's body covered with scars, he couldn't say a word of reprimand. He is also a human being, he also needs friends, and he will also be moved. He looked at Draco with complicated eyes. Don't do this again next time, it's just a book, throw it away. As long as you're okay. Merlin's beard, who can tell me what happened? Mrs. Hooch, who arrived belatedly, saw the scene in front of her and let out a sharp crack. I almost fainted when my eyes went dark. After learning what happened from other students, Mrs. Hooch went completely berserk. Mr. Weasley, did you turn a deaf ear to what I said? Disobeying classroom disciplines, being jealous, insulting classmates, and snatching textbooks from classmates. 50 points from Gryffindor for your disgusting behavior. Gryffindor howled, and everyone stared at Ron with disgust. They are just at odds with Slytherin, but they are not indifferent to right and wrong. What Ron has done has touched their bottom line. As the Quidditch referee of Hogwarts, Mrs. Hooch is an extremely fair person. There is no room for sand in the eyes. She stared closely into Ron's eyes and spoke word by word. I will tell Professor McGonagall truthfully what happened today. Also, bad boys like you will not be welcome in my class from now on. In one sentence, Ron's reputation at Hogwarts fell to the bottom. It was also a death sentence for Ron's Quidditch career. She turned her head and looked at Yagus, with a hint of apology in her tone. I'm very sorry, Mr. Grindelwald. Due to my negligence, you were treated unfairly in my class. When Mr. Weasley recovers from his injury, I will personally bring him to apologize to you. Mrs. Hooch, you can't predict every situation, so don't blame yourself for it. Yagus shook his head slightly. It's not your fault. Besides, I haven't lost anything. Tolerant gentleman. Mrs. Hooch finally had a smile on her face. Your brave move to save your classmates earns 10 points for Slytherin. What happened in the flying lesson quickly spread throughout Hogwarts. Being ungrateful will be disliked wherever you put it. Not to mention that Argus had helped Gryffindor students on more than one occasion. Even saved their lives. This instantly made Gryffindor the laughingstock of everyone. In the school doctor's ward, Harry and Draco, who also became Seekers, were located at opposite ends of the school doctor's room. It's just that the environments the two of them live in are exactly the opposite. A dozen little wizards, headed by Argos, stayed in front of Draco's hospital bed, bringing a large number of gifts and blessings. On the other hand, Harry was the only one guarding Ron. Empty. I also get the glares from other people from time to time. The two looked at each other in silence, no one knew what to say. Just then, an owl flew from the window and dropped a red letter on Ron's bedside. Ron's expression suddenly changed. Oh no. Shivering, he reached out and picked up the letter. But I still dare not open it. Look, Weasley got a howler. There was a burst of laughter from the crowd, and everyone looked at him with joking eyes. Take it apart, Weasley, and let us hear what you did. Yeah, maybe Mrs. Molly is praising you for the good things you did. Harry, how about? Ron swallowed and turned his gaze to Harry. Harry was not a fool. Even if he had never heard of the Howler letter, he could tell from the reactions of others. It's definitely not a good thing. He shook his head quickly and refused. Ron looked dissatisfied and hesitantly reached out to the letter. Just touching the seal of the roaring letter lightly, the letter paper jumped out immediately. The ear-piercing roar resounded throughout the ward. Ron Weasley. How dare you do this in school? Making trouble in class and grabbing things from my classmates. I'm going to be so pissed off by you. The red envelope and the white letter paper combined to form the face of a roaring woman. Ron was stunned for a moment after being yelled at, his face full of fear. Professor McGonagall came here personally to talk to me about you. Even if you were expelled from the school, I won't be surprised at all. This is all your fault. If you dare to cause trouble in school again, your father and I will get you back right away. Did you hear that? Ron didn't care whether Mrs. Molly could see it or not, and nodded frantically towards the shouting letter. After yelling at Ron, he turned to look at Harry. His tone became extremely gentle. Hello, dear Harry, I'm glad you and Ron are friends. You are welcome to come to the Burrow as a guest at any time. After saying this, yelling letter didn't care about how Ron would clean it, and just tore himself into pieces of shredded paper. Dropped on the bedside. Ha 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 ha. The crowd burst into laughter. Ron, who had just been ignored, once again became the target of ridicule. A boy imitated Mrs. Molly's angry antics earlier while learning the lines for the yelling letter. Ron Weasley. How dare you do this in school? Making trouble in class, grabbing things from classmates. I know I was wrong, Mom. Another boy pretended to be Ron, with a submissive expression. It made everyone laugh. Ron's eyes were red with anger and he turned his head, trying not to look at them. Harry couldn't bear his little friend to be tortured like this, so he trotted all the way to Argus. Yagos. Harry, what they did was not directed by me, or do you want me to intercede for someone who repays kindness with revenge? As soon as Harry came over, Argus knew what he was about to fart. He sneered in his heart. Is it because I'm usually too gentle at Hogwarts, so you treat me as a weakling with no temper? If you feel a little wronged, come and let me intercede. I am your father. Why didn't I see you so positive when Draco was injured? Anyone who does something wrong must pay the price. He should have thought of this when he chose to steal my things during his flying lesson. Ron, he didn't mean to. Not intentional. Yagus laughed angrily. If it weren't for the fact that he needed to use Harry to play against Dumbledore later, he would have really wanted to slap him. Isn't this the inappropriate image of the Virgin Mary's giant baby? Whoever is weak is justified. You mean, the broomstick under his leg flew to me on its own, and then snatched my book away on its own. You ended up bumping into Draco, didn't you? Argus, Ron already knows he was wrong. After hearing this, Argus no longer wanted to continue to struggle with Harry. He was not Harry's nanny. As long as he could use Dumbledore's attention to Harry and force Dumbledore to make concessions, it would be enough. As for the rest, leave it to Dumbledore. He turned his head, not wanting to look at Harry again. With a flick of the wand, the knife on the table automatically peeled an apple. Put it to Draco's mouth. Madame Pomfrey said that the bruises on your body will disappear as long as you apply ointment. Have a night's rest and you can go to class as usual tomorrow. Draco nodded, looking at Harry with uncontrollable disappointment in his eyes. Goyle and Crabbe sensed Argus's impatience. The two people were like two door gods, keeping him away from him and not giving him any chance to get close to Yagus. Pansy sneered and mocked. Draco and Argus have been here for so long, and Weasley didn't even say a word of apology. Is this what you call knowing you were wrong? Get out of here, you are not welcome here. Harry was speechless. With a blushing face, he ran back to Ron's bed in despair. Pansy didn't seem to be relieved yet. She pointed at Ron's hospital bed and continued angrily, Weasley, if it weren't for Argus's quick reaction in potions class, do you think you would have been able to take flying lessons? How many people have been harmed by that pot of potion you brewed? You did something wrong and didn't want to repent, and you asked your friends to wipe your butt for you. You're really good. Ron was so ashamed and angry that Pansy's words brought tears to his eyes, but he could not refute. He grabbed the quilt and buried his head deeply in it. Yagus sneered. Unbearable. Ron Weasley, your good days have just begun. Return to the Slytherin common room in the evening. Yagus was about to go back to the dormitory to rest when he suddenly heard someone calling his name. Excuse me, is Mr. Grindelwald here? Please call him for me, thank you. Yagus came to the door of the rest room, and the three redheads were very conspicuous. Mr. Grindelwald, we are here to apologize to you on Ron's behalf. We spoiled him rotten since he was a child and caused you trouble. I'm really sorry. Percy came forward with the Weasley twins and bowed to Argus without saying anything. Weasley's tutor is quite good, and both Arthur and Molly are extremely upright people. He didn't choose to protect his shortcomings because of Argus and Draco's life experience. Percy and Weasley did not choose to shield them blindly. After learning the news, they immediately came to apologize to Argus. As for the textbook Ron threw away, we will compensate you for the original price, or buy you a new one. When his injury heals, I will bring him in person to apologize to you and Mr. Malfoy. I hope you can forgive me. There's no need to apologize. Just take care of him in the future. Argus is not a person who takes anger lightly. Both Percy and Weasley were his chess pieces planned in advance, and he would never allow himself to leave a bad feeling for the three of them in advance. This led to the subsequent poaching by Dumbledore. It's getting late. If there's nothing else, you can go back and rest first. Draco, I will go. Wait a moment. Seeing that Argus was about to leave, Percy hurriedly spoke. His face was slightly red, as if it was extremely difficult to speak. There is one more thing I want to discuss with you. That's the 5th grade textbook. Percy stammered and lowered his head guiltily. That's right, Argus. Seeing that Percy couldn't speak, Fred took over the conversation generously. We don't have enough gold to give you a new 5th grade textbook at the moment. We have to wait a few days for my parents to mail the gold to you. If you need it urgently, I can give you my book first, and I will exchange it with you when I buy new books. Percy was afraid that Argus would be dissatisfied, so he spoke hastily. Or, we can get the goods to compensate. Fred winked at Yagus. Those are all good things, the freshman's favorite. There are fat tongue taffy that can make your tongue bigger, and there are exquisite big shit eggs that can make a classroom stink for a week. Besides, shut up, Fred. Yagus smiled and shook his head. There is no need for the new book. The book is not damaged. I will continue reading without delay. And it has my notes on it, so it will be very troublesome to change it. But, it's nothing, Percy. Argus smiled and shook his head. If you really feel bad, just lend me your old notes to look at. Speaking of which, the notes of Gryffindor's first grader are not something that ordinary people can borrow. I took advantage this time. It's a small matter, leave it to me, Mr. Grindelwald. When mentioning the results, Percy's face clearly showed pride. Just call me Argus, that's what Fred and George do. Oh, listen, Fred, our top grader is finally useful. Percy glared at the funny George. Okay, Yagus, then I will take them both back first, and I will send the notes tomorrow morning. Don't worry, whenever you are free, I can just go and get it myself. Percy thought for a while. I'll give you the notes in the Hogwarts hall tomorrow morning. Then I won't disturb your rest, good night. After saying that, he took the Weasley twins away one by one. Yagus did not go back and waited for about 10 minutes. Two sneaky figures emerged from the stairs. The generous chief gave us a secret message to come back. Are you interested in our products? We have a lot of good things here, let me guess what you want. No need to guess, I'm interested in more than just your products. More than just products. Could it be that? George covered his mouth with one hand, pretending to be frightened. It's over. The hearts of many little witches at Hogwarts will be broken. Yagus' head is full of black lines. Is this what is unique about Britain? So gay. Even teenagers know it. Fred patted Yagus on the shoulder comfortingly. Don't worry, this is normal, we won't tell anyone else. By the way, you asked us to come. Gone. Being messed around by these two people, I almost forgot about the real thing. Only then did Yagus remember the purpose of calling the two of them over. He was afraid of being confused by the two of them again, so he said, I called you back because I want to discuss cooperation with you. In other words, investment is more appropriate. Invest. Upon hearing this word, the Weasley twins looked at each other. From the other party's eyes, I could see the uncontrollable surprise. For so many years, their hobbies have not been recognized by others. Both Mrs. Molly and the professors at Hogwarts have expressed their dissatisfaction more than once. They even hesitated to continue the hobby. I thought their career might gradually decline, but I never thought it would turn around. Yagus carefully observed the two people's reactions and told the other party his thoughts. Your product seems to me to be a great value. The development prospects are also good, but we are limited by funding and cannot fully realize them. As long as you have enough funds, you can definitely make a lot of gold galleons. Look, Fred, our sponsor has a good eye. The Weasley twins hugged Argus's shoulders as if they had found a close friend. I wonder how many galleons our future shareholders intend to invest. When this topic was mentioned, George became a little nervous. His hands quietly pinched the corners of his clothes. Fred's eyes also became a little more worried. In any case, they are only 13 or 14-year-old children. Facing the future fate of my beloved career, I still feel somewhat uneasy. Yagus slowly stretched out 5 fingers. 5 gold galleons will be enough for us to use for a while. It's 50. 50. George and Fred couldn't believe it. I didn't recover from the surprise for a while. They didn't wake up from their ecstasy until Yagus handed over the heavy bag of gold galleons to their hands. These 50 coins are only the first batch of funds. From now on, I will be responsible for all your materials, including experimental consumption. Just give me a backup of the product you developed. We will share the subsequent profits 50-50. This. The Weasley twins looked at each other and slapped each other hard. Then they hugged each other. George, this is not a dream. The generous Mr. Grindelwald is really willing to invest a large sum of money in our cause. We no longer have to hide here and there every day. They couldn't believe that pie actually fell from the sky. It hit them right on the head. Not only that, after you graduate, you can come directly to the Saints. I have specially prepared a joke shop for you, and you will be responsible for everything. Merlin's Long Johns. Today is definitely our lucky day. The Weasley brothers were about to be knocked unconscious by Argus Pie. The corners of his mouth almost reached behind his ears. I almost knelt down and kowtowed to Yagus. Yagus smiled and reassured the two. He won't do a losing business. In Yagus' opinion, the Weasley twins' mischievous toys will definitely become the signature of the Saints' future shopping street. Not to mention 50 gold galleons, as long as he can capture them, he won't hesitate even 5,000. The three of them discussed some specific details, and when they looked up, it was already late at night. Yagus stretched and made a clicking sound. It's getting late, how about? How about an exciting late-night snack? George raised his eyebrows and suggested to Yagus. Supper. Yagus rubbed his belly. George didn't say it was okay, but when he said it, he was really a little hungry. He nodded, as if thinking of something. Go to the Hogwarts kitchen. Another fellow man. The Weasley twins excitedly pulled Argus and sneaked through the secret passages. To be honest, Yagus started to regret it halfway through. It's really not cost-effective to travel so far in the middle of the night for a late-night snack. But, it's here. The three of them came to a brightly lit stone passage. At the end of the passage hangs an oil painting of a fruit bowl. Fred walked skillfully to the painting and gently scratched one of the pears with his hand. Grr. The pear seemed to be alive. It was scratched and twitched, revealing a green door handle. Fred twisted hard and the painting opened. Lord Sponsor, welcome to the Hogwarts kitchen. In the kitchen, several busy house elves approached the three of them. There was no fuss, I was used to it all. Dear wizard, what would you like to eat? Just 2 servings of pumpkin juice, 2 servings of baked potatoes and steak. The Weasley twins said in unison. I'll have a glass of lemon juice, some fried sausages and a bacon omelet, thank you. Thank you. Sophie, did you hear that? The respected little wizard actually said thank you to Leah. Leah showed amazing excitement and grabbed an elf next to her and couldn't stop asking. The house elf named Sophie had uncontrollable envy in her eyes. Okay, Leah, don't keep our respected guests waiting. You were right. Leah actually kept the distinguished guest waiting. Leah is a bad elf. A bad guy. As if she was stimulated by something, Leah picked up her head and hit it against the wall. Yagus was stunned and didn't react for a while. While she was distracted, Leah had already delivered the food requested by the 3 Yagus. The difference is that the food of the Weasley twins is just made according to their requirements and placed on a plate casually. The sausages and bacon that Yagus wanted to eat were exquisitely presented. Thick sauce covered the bacon, and the lemonade cup even had a pure white flower on it. Dear guest, this is the sauce specially prepared for you by Leah. Please taste it. Leah's eyes were filled with anticipation. The Weasley twins looked at Argos's exquisite meal, and then looked at themselves, who were just like pig food. Totally sour. This is too much of a double standard. Why didn't we get this kind of treatment when we first came here? No, Yagus, we demand a food exchange. Leah looked at Yagus in panic, curled her mouth, and opened her mouth to stop something. But he didn't dare to speak. Yagus smiled and patted her head comfortingly. Cut a piece of bacon with a knife and dip it in the sauce. It's delicious. Thanks for the treat, Leah. The distinguished guest praised Leah. Leah was very happy and kept showing off to the other elves. Not to be outdone, a bunch of house elves in the kitchen came up with their own tricks. Courses of delicious food were delivered to Yagus free of charge. Longing for the praise of Argos. For the first time, Yagus felt that too much food was a form of torture. This meal left Argus with a bulging belly. The Weasley twins enjoyed a lot of glory with Argus and ate a lot of delicacies they had never tasted before. The 3 people left with the house elf's reluctant eyes. George couldn't help but sigh. It seems that next time I sneak into the kitchen, I have to bring Yagus with me. Otherwise, you will definitely not be able to eat this delicious food. Fred nodded in agreement. Yeah, I'm afraid that after today's meal, I won't be able to eat other food in the future. Don't worry, there will be opportunities in the future. Yagus didn't think he would stay in the dormitory every night from now on. The restricted book section of the library and the secret rooms of the founders of Hogwarts are all places he wants to explore. If there is a chance to get the Marauder's map from the hands of the Weasley twins, the Saints will definitely find time to take a look. Based on this calculation, he really doesn't have much time to stay in the dormitory. Since the restrooms of Gryffindor and Slytherin were not on the same road, the 3 of them finished their supper and left. The Weasley twins planned to give Argus a ride, but Argus refused. Along the path he walked before, Yagus sneaked quietly. His memory is pretty good. Even if he only walked through it once, he can clearly remember the way back. Meow. Suddenly, a cat meowed in the silent passage. Then came the hoarse voice of Filch, the administrator of Hogwarts. Mrs. Norris, someone sneaked out again, right? Smell carefully. What bad luck. Can this happen? You must learn the illusion body curse after you go back. Yagus secretly cursed himself for being unlucky, looked around, jumped on the escalator, and ducked into a classroom not far away. There was no light in the dark classroom, and Filch's footsteps behind him were getting closer and closer. Yagus was afraid of being discovered and did not dare to use magic lighting. Holding onto the wall, he walked forward in the dark. He didn't care much about the deduction of points. Only children would care about this kind of playing house thing. The reason why he didn't want to be caught was that he was worried that Dumbledore would be suspicious of him. Since the last conversation in the principal's office, he knew that he aroused Dumbledore's fear. And now, there is still a long time before Voldemort is resurrected. He didn't want Dumbledore to draw attention to him. Is there another door? No. Why does this door look so familiar? Yagus recalled the series of stone statues and spider webs he touched on the road, and a wry smile appeared on his face. It can't be such a coincidence, right? Why did I come to Lu Wei? Through the crack in the door, I heard the faint snoring coming from inside the door. I immediately realized where I had run into. The first test Dumbledore assigned to Harry was the hiding place of the Philosopher's Stone. It is also the detention center for the three-headed dog Lu Wei. If Dumbledore didn't cast any magic here, he wouldn't believe it even to death. Maybe as soon as he opened the door with his front foot, Dumbledore would know it with his back foot. Gamble. Yagus hid in a corner, picked up the wand, and pointed it at himself. Cleaned up. A slight magic touch passed by, and the dusty smell on his body slowly dissipated. The footsteps of Filch and Mrs. Norris sounded outside the door. Did someone come in, honey? Filch hunched over and picked up Mrs. Norris with an oil lamp in his hand. He poked his head inside and observed carefully for a while. It seemed that there was no one inside, so he mumbled for a while, hugged the cat and turned around to leave. Fortunately, I used magic to remove the smell in advance. Hurry back to the dormitory. If you bump into a professor, he won't be as easy to fool as Filch. Yagus waited for a while, confirmed that Filch had left, and then walked out of the room. But not long after walking, Yagus discovered something sad. He is lost. That's right. The stairs of Hogwarts extend in all directions. He only jumped up the stairs once and turned a few corners before he found that he could not find his way back. If I had known better, I would have asked the Weasley twins to send me back. How long will this detour last? Yagus hated his previous behavior as a gentleman. He flicked the bullet towards the bottom of the castle and was hesitating whether to jump directly. A strong smell of garlic hits my nose. Immediately afterwards, there was a stuttering voice. Slytherin's new student. You. Why are you here? If you don't sleep at 3 o'clock in the morning, nothing good will happen. Otherwise, how could I suddenly encounter this guy? Yagus's blood pressure soared, and his body tensed instantly. He knew who this person was without looking back. Quirrell. Defense against the dark arts professor at Hogwarts. More importantly, the final boss of this novel lives in the back of his head, Voldemort. The commotion caused by entering Hogwarts is quite big. Especially his last name, Grindelwald. There's no way it wouldn't attract Voldemort's attention. Calm down, Argus. With Dumbledore here, as long as you don't show any abnormality, it's impossible for him to take action rashly. After silently comforting himself with a few words, Yagus regained that familiar smile on his face. Professor Quirrell, good evening. Night. Good evening, Mr. Grindelwald. You don't sleep in the lounge, why are you here? There was a hint of doubt in Quirrell's tone, and he was even a little nervous. Sorry, Professor, I just went to the kitchen for a late night snack. Night snack. That's right, I got a little lost in reading at night, and it was already midnight when I woke up. Yes, really. There are not many little wizards as studious as you. Quirrell stumbled, his eyes flicking back and forth over Argus. Suddenly, his expression changed, and his face that was rosy just now instantly turned pale. The look he looked at Yagus also became hesitant and unbearable. Something's wrong. His eyes are wrong. Yagus was keenly aware of Quirrell's changes and quietly retreated. Professor, if nothing happens, I will go back to the lounge first. If Mr. Filch catches me, I won't get any good results. Have a sweet dream. Wait a minute. Cold sweat broke out on Quirrell's forehead, as if he was enduring great pain. He forced a smile. Mr. Grindelwald, if you are willing, why not bring your book to my office and let me refer to it for you? It's too late, so I won't bother you, Professor. I'll visit you another day. Yagus kept walking. He said while stepping back. Mr. Grindelwald, it is not like a good student to refuse the teacher's invitation. Just when Yagus was about to run away, Quirrell's expression suddenly changed. The whole person has an indescribable peculiar temperament. Eyes full of confidence. Yagus lost consciousness for a moment, and the next second, Occlumency was running wildly. Legilimency. You really pissed off Voldemort. You shouldn't have promised the Weasley twins that they would go out for a late-night snack today. The peaceful days have passed for too long, and I don't even have this precaution. It seems like it's time to get some exercise. Yagus thought to himself. But now is not the time to think about this. Whether you can escape or not is a question. He was afraid that his sudden action would alert Voldemort, so his expression remained unchanged and he continued to respond with a faint smile. Professor, it's not that I want to refuse, it's just that it's too late and I have to go to class tomorrow. Professor McGonagall will be unhappy if you fall asleep in class. Quirrell's eyes flashed with surprise when he discovered that Yagus was just a little absent-minded. Looking at Yagus with interest. Mr. Grindelwald is still afraid of the professor. I'm a student, so it's abnormal not to be afraid, right? Caca. Just then, tiny footsteps came from the distance. Yagus raised his eyebrows, fearing that the visitor wouldn't notice him. The sound was a bit louder. Professor Quirrell, I'm really sorry. I'm really tired tonight. Thank you for your invitation. I will definitely come and apologize someday. Sure enough, the footsteps paused. Then he quickly approached in his direction. Mr. Grindelwald, if I remember correctly, you should be lying in bed now, instead of wandering around the castle like a stupid Gryffindor lion. This was the first time that Argus felt that Snape's voice sounded so beautiful. Quirrell looked up at the direction Snape was coming from, and looked at Argus with even more interest in his eyes. Mr. Grindelwald, we will meet again. I hope you won't refuse my invitation next time. Of course, Professor. Snape's arrival gave Argus an instant confidence. Turning his head, he faced Snape's gloomy face. Mr. Grindelwald, do you want to explain to your hardworking old dean why you violated school rules on the second day of school? Professor Snape, I just came out for a late-night snack. Supper. Snape sneered. Maybe Madame Pomfrey's tranquilizing potion is more suitable for you. Congratulations, Mr. Grindelwald, because of your brave behavior, you successfully earned yourself a week of confinement. 5 points from Slytherin. Tomorrow night, remember to report to Mr. Filch. Also, go back to bed now. Okay, Dean. Yagus just nodded and smiled. No emotion visible. He turned around and walked towards the Slytherin lounge. Snape asked from behind. Professor Quirrell, I think you know very well. In the principal's office. Dumbledore lay on the couch, tapping the armrest with his fingers. Ever since he learned what Ron had done today, his wrinkled brows had not relaxed. He was already old, and it was almost an impossible task to deal with the resurrected Voldemort. Harry is his hope for the future. From Harry's birth, to being admitted to Hogwarts, and then to school. Every step is carefully planned by him. Ron Weasley was the partner he had prepared for Harry. Dumbledore originally thought that with the talent and strength of the Weasley family and their influence in the wizarding world, he would be an excellent helper for Harry in the future. Unexpectedly, despite all the calculations, I still missed something. That is, what if Ron can't shoulder the task of being a savior partner? You know, what he requires from Harry's partner is not just to eat, drink, and play with him. Ron needs to be able to help Harry at critical moments and help him quickly grow into a pillar against Voldemort. But what has Ron done now? What happened in the potions class can still be explained by mistakes, but what about the flying class? This is no longer a question of whether we can help Harry, but of leading Harry astray. Once Harry was influenced by him and became a jealous and pushy person, how could he fight Voldemort? He thought about this all night. While he was thinking hard, the stone statue outside the door suddenly opened. Snape walked in with a slumped face. Severus, you're here. Dumbledore's vicissitudes of voice sounded a little tired. Snape walked into the principal's office swinging his dark robes, looking like a giant bat. Quirrell met with Mr. Grindelwald tonight. Dumbledore's eyes suddenly opened, and his relaxed waist gradually straightened. What happened? It must be a coincidence. Why do you say that? Snape thought for a moment and replied, I can feel that Argus is not very willing to talk to Quirrell. Or, disgust is more appropriate. Dumbledore narrowed his eyes slightly. It seems that he noticed something. He can detect that person. Mr. Grindelwald's level of occlumency is quite good. Even I can't find out his true thoughts. Dumbledore rubbed his eyebrows. With Voldemort's current state, it would not be unusual for him to notice him if he uses legilimency rashly. Severus. Dumbledore's expression suddenly became serious. I want to ask you something. Our principal, do you even want to monitor an 11-year-old child? Snape can become a double agent, and he is top-notch in both mind and strength. It was easy to see what Dumbledore was thinking at a glance. The tone was very sarcastic. It's not surveillance. I just need you to pay more attention to the child. He looks so much like my old friend, and he's very close to Harry. I worry. Snape sneered. What are you worried about? Mr. Grindelwald will not do so many stupid things like Mr. Potter and Mr. Weasley who have splendens on their heads. Dumbledore looked directly into Snape's eyes. You know what I mean, we have no chance of failure. There can be no mistakes in Harry's growth. Snape didn't even look at him, turned around and left. Dumbledore spoke again. He is Lily's only child, and like Lily, he has a pair of emerald green eyes. Snape paused. The body trembled slightly. We must do our best to create a perfect growth environment for Harry. We can't let him have an impact on our plans. Severus. Snape was silent for a long time and walked straight out of the principal's office door. New. In a professor's dormitory. Master, I don't understand why you are interested in Grindelwald. You know, his father is. It's not your turn to tell me what I do. A cold voice entered Quirrell's mind. The next second, intense pain swept through his body. Quirrell fell to the ground with a thud. Wails kept coming from his mouth. 10 fingers became bloody due to friction with the ground. Master, I was wrong, please spare your loyal servant. I hope what happened today is the last time. Voldemort's hoarse warning came from behind his head. After a few minutes, Quirrell stood up slowly, leaning on the wall. The clothes on his body were soaked with sweat. When is the closest defense against the dark arts class to him? Who? Quirrell didn't respond. I asked subconsciously. As a result, the suffocating pain struck again. I understand. Master. The closest class to Grindelwald is the day after tomorrow. The day after tomorrow. Voldemort thought for a moment and said, prepare the potion in advance. I will personally test his talent the day after tomorrow. Do you understand me clearly? Clear. Quirrell nodded hurriedly. He and the saints behind him can become my perfect tools. If this is done, you will have done a great job. When the time comes, I will teach you all the magic knowledge you want. Thank you, Master, for the gift. Go back to dorms. Yagus was lying on the bed, and the system prompts sounded in his head. Congratulations to the host for completing the night tour and obtaining the achievement, Night Walker. Achievement point reward, 50. Fortunately, there is an achievement reward, otherwise I would have really suffered a huge loss this time. Yagus seriously thought about the next response. When I met Quirrell today, Voldemort had used legilimency on him. The ability to use complex magic proves that his condition is not too bad. At least it was much stronger than when he snatched Harry's Philosopher's Stone. If Voldemort could use legilimency at that time, he wouldn't have been able to find the Philosopher's Stone hidden in Harry's pocket. Although I didn't have a direct conflict with him tonight, it still attracted his attention. Be more careful during your upcoming defense against the dark arts lessons and at Hogwarts. Strength. Still not strong enough. Yagus sighed softly. He is now in an extremely awkward stage. Being too young results in insufficient magic power. Although he has a lot of magic, he has too little combat experience. Not as good as above, but more than enough as below. The next step is to speed up the improvement of strength. After only 2 days at Hogwarts, he felt a deep sense of crisis. After formulating a series of plans for himself in his mind to improve his strength, Yagus fell into a deep sleep. The next day, he came to the Hogwarts hall with a groggy head. As soon as I sat down, I got the news. Because there were too many injuries in Gryffindor and Slytherin's potions class yesterday, today's herbology class was held by the four houses together. This makes our know-it-all lady very happy. This was her first class with Yagus. Pulling Yagus all the way to the herbal medicine classroom. The rich smell of soil mixed with fertilizer filled the air. Professor Sprout wore a khaki robe and a patch on his hat. He smiled and faced everyone. Quiet, little wizards. I know you will be a little excited to attend class with so many classmates for the first time, but there will be plenty of time for you to communicate in the future. First, let's take a look at the plants we're going to learn today. Stand back, little wizards. Professor Sprout pulled a box from the corner and opened it. A group of dark green plants were swinging their long tentacles inside the box. Now, can anyone tell me, what kind of plant is this? Hermione glanced at Argus and raised her hands excitedly. Miss Granger. It's a crab claw, Professor. Crab claw. Professor Sprout nodded. Are there any other answers? I was a little disappointed when no one spoke. Then he looked at Yagus with a little expectancy. Mr. Grindelwald, what kind of plant do you think this is? Yagus took a closer look. Long and dense tentacles, dark green vines. That's really characteristic of the crab claw plant. So, you also think this is a crab claw orchid? No. Yagus walked to the window and opened the curtains. The shining sunlight shone inside the box, and the tentacles that were swaying just now shrank sharply. He quickly hid in a corner of the box. Keep rolling. The crab claw plant is not afraid of the sun. It is obvious that this is a devil's net disguised as a crab claw plant. Very good. Mr. Grindelwald. Professor Sprout couldn't stop smiling. For your meticulous observation and profound knowledge. 5 points for Slytherin. Looking back at a frustrated Hermione. Miss Granger also has a pretty good grasp of the textbooks. 3 points to Ravenclaw for your studio useness. Hermione was not convinced, pouted, leaned against Argus and said angrily, "Humph. Just wait and see. Next time, I will definitely not lose to you." Professor Sprout waved his wand and closed the curtains. The devil's net felt the stimulation disappear and slowly stretched out. Devil's web is a dangerous vine that, in certain circumstances, disguises itself as a crab orchid. A mature devil's net can extend its tendrils to wrap around nearby enemies. It is very powerful. People often get injured by mistaking the devil's net for a crab claw. Even death. The way to deal with it is also very simple. Mr. Grindelwald's behavior just now is a good example. Devil's nets like dark and humid environments. As long as they use strong light or flames, they can retreat. Professor Sprout gave an extremely detailed account, analyzing the characteristics of the devil's net, methods of dealing with it, and its natural enemies. However, Argus noticed that Harry had drifted out of consciousness at some point. I didn't even hear what was said. He shook his head secretly. I feed rice into your mouth, but you don't even want to chew it. Without Hermione's help, I don't see how you would have passed the test of the future Professor Sprout. Because of the dangers of Devil's Net, after explaining the knowledge about Devil's Net, Professor Sprout showed everyone how to deal with it. Then put it away and take out the next plant. Hermione immediately became excited and raised her hands high before Professor Sprout asked. Fortunately, this was not Snape's class, otherwise, Hermione would have been mocked a few times. Miss Granger, please tell me. This is a bubble stem, Professor. The pus is very effective in treating blisters. Excellent answer, Miss Granger. Does anyone know about this plant? Mr. Grindelwald. Tiao Jen, Professor. Where is this plant? Miss Granger. It's by Xion. The rest of the day was almost a two-man show for Hermione and Argus. There were many plants that the young wizard had never even heard of, but the two of them could answer them fluently. As if on purpose, Professor Sprout said that every time he called Hermione, the next time he called her, it would be Argus. After most of the class, she couldn't help but sigh. If today's class was a test, I would definitely give you both a big O. Hermione was very satisfied with the compliment. I feel that the books I have memorized in the past 2 days are finally bearing fruit. He looked at Yagus quite proudly. Professor Sprout, who had finished teaching basic knowledge, clapped his hands and motioned for everyone to look over. Next, I'm going to teach you how to deal with Tiautaugen. If you don't want the juice from jumping roots to splash on your hands and it will itch for several days, wear gloves. After everyone completed the task according to the professor's request, Professor Sprout gave them a jumping root one by one. Well done, little wizards. Now, gently pick up the bottom of the Tiaotao root. Be careful. The Tiaotao root is very sensitive. It may pop out of your hand with a little force. Yagus had been exposed to these plants a lot when he was grinding for achievements in the past, and it was easy to deal with the jumping roots. It was different when it was Hermione's turn. Although she has read many books, she has never had close contact with them. What's more, how can things on paper compare with reality? As soon as I held Tiaotaogan, I felt the object in my palm jump violently. Ah! Hermione screamed and almost threw the jumping stick out of her hand. Don't be nervous, relax. Argus's voice floated behind her. His voice seemed to have some kind of magic, making Hermione unconsciously calm. Yes, gently, like a small animal. Put it in a flower pot and cover it with soil. With trembling palms, I put the jumping root into the flower pot. It wasn't until the soil was covered that he breathed a sigh of relief. Thank you, Yagus. You're welcome. Hermione's eyes were shining with stars as she stared blankly at Argus. I don't know how long it took before she came back to her senses. Suddenly I thought of something, lowered my head, and became a little depressed. Agus, am I stupid? Because of what happened just now? Hermione didn't refute, lowered her head, and acknowledged what Argus said. Argus chuckled and looked into her eyes. Hermione, everyone has something they're not good at. We can't let some of her shortcomings overshadow her strengths. Don't forget, you are a knowledgeable, wise, and far-sighted Ravenclaw. When you encounter a problem, you should think about solving it instead of worrying about it. Besides, this is your first time taking a herbal medicine class, so it's normal for you to have no experience. Yagus' enlightenment obviously worked. The disappointment on Hermione's face was wiped away, and she smiled again. I understand, Yagus. As long as you understand, wise little Ravenclaw witch, could you please move your feet? Oh, sorry. After herbal medicine class, Hermione and the Parvati sisters successively invited Argus to the library, but he politely refused. Thinking of the confinement tonight, Yagus planned to go to Hagrid to ventilate his breath first. After all, there are many dangerous magical animals in the Forbidden Forest. Werewolves, hippogriffs, and Hagrid's secretly raised acronym Aragog. The danger level of that thing is the same as that of a giant dragon. With Hagrid's big-hearted character, Yagus was really afraid that he would let him patrol alone with just one word. All the way to Hagrid hut. Outside the door is a pile of giant pumpkins. Hagrid was mixing something with a wooden barrel. In Yagus's eyes, the huge wooden barrel was no different from a washbasin in Hagrid's hand. Seeing Yagus coming, Hagrid put down what he was holding. He greeted Yagus happily. Yagos, you're here. Come in and sit down, I heard the professor said. Don't worry about the confinement at night, I will take good care of you. With your words, I feel relieved. Yagus followed Hagrid into the house. As soon as I walked in, I was shocked by Hagrid's luxurious furniture. A blanket made of unicorn fur and a chair made of holly wood. There were also unicorn horns and the broken branches of the bowtruckle. All kinds of precious materials were piled in the corner like rubbish. What kind of hunting ground was this guarding? It was clearly a golden mountain. Sensing the strange look in Yagus's eyes, Hagrid mistakenly thought that her room was too dirty, which made Yagus dissatisfied. Scratching his head sheepishly. I'm sorry, I usually don't have many people here, so it's a bit chaotic. How about you wait a moment while I clean up? You misunderstood Hagrid, I just didn't expect you to hoard so many magical animal materials here. Yagus explained. I usually pick these up when I patrol the Forbidden Forest. These have been put away for a long time. If you want them, just tell me and I will leave some for you. These materials may be precious in the eyes of ordinary people, but here in Hagrid, they have long been commonplace. There is no feeling. After inviting Yagus to sit down, he happily took out his signature rock cake and put it on the table. Pour another cup of strong tea. This is the rock cake I made, I guarantee you will like it. Have a try. Yagus didn't hold it properly and accidentally dropped it on the table. It happened to hit the dinner plate. Click. The dinner plate shattered with the sound, but the rock cake was safe and sound. Make a clanging sound. The air became silent for a moment. The corner of Yagis's mouth twitched. Are you sure they don't like it or can't bite it? Under Hagrid's regretful gaze, Yagis shook his head wildly and refused. Looking at the magical animal materials scattered on the ground, he suddenly remembered something and asked. By the way, Hagrid, how do you usually deal with the things you bring back from the Forbidden Forest? Some of them I keep for myself, and some I sell to Diagon Alley. But you know, those purebloods in Diagon Alley are all vampires. Except for some specialized ranches, the purchase prices are shockingly low. When this topic was mentioned, Hagrid was very dissatisfied and kept complaining. Yagis's eyes lit up. Hagrid, I have a suggestion that you can consider. If you have any materials in the future, you can sell them to me directly. I buy everything at market price. What do you think? Yagis has always known that replacing Diagon Alley cannot be completed with just a few potion stores and clothing stores. A large number of stores of various types are needed. Magical animal materials have always been a popular trade for wizards. If Hagrid is dealt with, the Saints will have a stable supply. Even if Argus and Dumbledore break up in the future, they will no longer be able to trade with Hagrid. The goods obtained in previous transactions were real. And the time for Argus and Dumbledore to break up will be at least a few years later. This period of time is enough for him to open up new sources of goods. While speaking, he kept observing Hagrid's expression with his eyes, trying to judge his thoughts. I thought Hagrid would hesitate, but his reaction was unexpectedly exciting. Hug Yagis. Yagos, you have helped me a lot. You don't know, every time I go to sell materials, the prices are lowered. Not even half of the market price. Of course. Yagis thought to himself. When people see your inarticulate expression, of course they will bully you. Are you trying to put on the name Hogwarts? Who dares? However, he did not tell Hagrid these words. He smiled and replied, Don't worry, I won't deliberately lower the price. Of course. We are friends. It's such a high price, will you? Hagrid hesitated, feeling that he had taken advantage of Yagis. I felt a little uneasy inside. No, you don't have to worry about selling the magical animal materials. At most, you just make less profit. What Yagis said was simply bullying an honest person. The materials Hagrid has on hand are all of high quality and affordable. Not to mention the market price, even if it were doubled, many people would be willing to buy it. If the wizard in Diagon Alley hadn't been sure that he wouldn't negotiate the price, he wouldn't have dared to lower the price so low. Fortunately, Hagrid is not very smart. Just hearing that everything was purchased at market price made him dizzy. That's good. Hagrid breathed a sigh of relief. With his simple nature, he only felt that he had taken advantage of Yagis. After discussing the specific transaction time and quantity with Yagis, I had to keep him here to finish lunch before letting Yagis go back to the dormitory. Spent the afternoon in the library with Hermione. As the sky grew dark, Yagis had a quick bite to eat in the lobby, took some fried fish from the dining table, and came to Filch's office. The door was unlocked and it was empty inside. There was only one cat lying on the table. Filch really doesn't know how to raise a cat. What a cat, but he raised it so thin that its fur is all knotted. Yagis stepped forward, took out the fried fish prepared in the hall, and placed it in front of Mrs. Norris. Hello, Mrs. Norris, we meet again. Mrs. Norris jumped down from the table and looked at Argus for a long time. He hesitated and picked up the small fried fish. Cleaned up. Yagis used magic to remove the stain from Mrs. Norris. He gently stroked her back with his hand. Realizing that Yagis had no ill intentions, Mrs. Norris stopped struggling and ate the fried fish generously. Eat slowly. No one will rob you. When facing non-hostile people, whether in front of or behind them, Yagis never hesitates to show his kindness. Even if it's just a cat. Just as he was enjoying the joy of petting the cat, an angry voice came from afar. Go away. What have you done to my Mrs. Norris? Filch roared and rushed towards Argus, the moment he saw Mrs. Norris. Stunned. My Mrs. Norris has turned out to be so beautiful. He couldn't believe that the cat that had been with him for so many years seemed to have changed its body after not seeing him for just a few minutes. If he hadn't seen Mrs. Norris's dark green pupils, Filch would have almost thought that this was a pet brought by Argus from the outside world. Mr. Filch, Mrs. Norris is indeed a beautiful cat. What did you call me? Filch suspected that his ears were hallucinating. He has been at Hogwarts for so long, and apart from all kinds of weird and unpleasant nicknames, he has never heard the little wizard call him anything else. Even if the professor calls him, it's just out of formula. Not from the heart. But Yagus was different. There was no boredom or contempt in his eyes. Exactly the same as watching other wizards. This made him feel the respect that he had never experienced before but dreamed of. Mr. Filch, if you are more concerned about this title, I can change it to another one. No. Just this. Filch was afraid that Argus would give him various nicknames like other little wizards, so he shook his head in a hurry. That's good. As for Mrs. Loris, I suggest you pay attention to her hygiene. If you can, try to give it more fruit. Yagus had raised cats for a while in his previous life and had some experience in raising cats. He originally wanted to let Mrs. Norris get vaccinated and eat some nutritious cat food. Thinking that this was the wizarding world, he changed his mind again. Filch was silent for a while and nodded. I'll pay attention. He took out an oil lamp from his office and picked up Mrs. Norris. Let's go, I'll take you to the Forbidden Forest. Seeing the thin wizard robe on Yagus, he hesitated for a moment. Speak stiffly. The Forbidden Forest is no better than a castle. You'd better go back and wear more clothes. Hagrid is an experienced guard. As long as you follow him well, there will be no danger. Thank you for the reminder, Mr. Filch. I have already put clothes on under the wizard's robe in advance. Yagus did not reject the other party's kindness and responded with a smile. Send Yagus all the way outside the Forbidden Forest. Hagrid is already waiting here. Seeing the two coming, he waved the lamp in his hand. Hey Yagus, this way. Go. Filch said and did not leave until he saw Yagus walking to Hagrid, then returned with Mrs. Norris. The Forbidden Forest was filled with a thick layer of fog at night. The twisted trees were twisting and crawling, and from time to time there were some weird noises. The roar coming from the depths of the Forbidden Forest is even more terrifying. Woof woof. Only when Yagus heard the barking did he notice that a puppy was sniffing around him. Don't be afraid, this is Yaya. Even though it's not big, it's a good helper. Let's go, we just need to take a look around the perimeter of the Forbidden Forest. Those little guys inside don't like anyone disturbing them. Hagrid walked in front holding a lamp, his sight completely obscured by his huge body. Yagus was happy to have peace of mind. Judging from Hagrid's words, there has been no unicorn injury in the Forbidden Forest. This side proves that Voldemort's target is still on the Sorcerer's Stone. Without Laofu, this trip to the Forbidden Forest could be said to be much safer. Be careful, Argos. The road here is not easy. As soon as he finished speaking, there was a strange noise under the tree on the left. Yaya, who was exploring the way ahead just now, whined a few times and crawled behind Hagrid. The atmosphere at the scene was a bit strange. Hagrid just finished praising Yaya as a good helper, but Yaya is just a little timid. Hagrid explained awkwardly and walked towards the tree that made the noise. Yagus pulled out his wand, his face full of alertness. Yagos, come and take a look. It's you Chimon. You're so lucky. As soon as Hagrid passed by, he waved his hand excitedly, signaling Yagus to come over. Moon crazy beast. There is such a good thing in the Forbidden Forest. Yagus took a few quick steps forward. A few pairs of big light green eyes blinked, staring at the Yagus too. Look, what a beautiful little guy. It's a pity that I didn't bring any tools. If their excrement is collected before sunrise, the plants can grow taller and bigger. When it came to magical animals, Hagrid suddenly became interested and patiently explained to Yagus. They are very shy and only come out during the full moon. Don't disturb them. After the patrol, I will take you back to the lounge. Hagrid patted the dirt on his body and continued patrolling the Forbidden Forest with Yagus. Hagrid was blocking the way, and Fang was clearing the way. The journey was smooth. Hagrid, don't you get bored when you usually patrol the Forbidden Forest alone? Yagus didn't want the atmosphere between the two to be too awkward, so he opened his mouth to find a topic. There was definitely some at the beginning. Later on, I gradually got used to it, and there were so many cute little guys accompanying me in the Forbidden Forest. Hagrid replied nonchalantly. Yagus sometimes felt that Hagrid's life was quite difficult. As a hybrid giant, he cannot blend in with the giants, and the wizard is unwilling to accept him. Finally met Dumbledore and was admitted to Hogwarts. As a result, he was framed by Voldemort again. His parents are missing, and he has only one younger brother, Grop, who is still unable to communicate. He guards the hunting ground all day long, and no one may come to chat with him for several days. No wonder Yagus would be so happy when he came over. Time flew by. Unknowingly, the two of them had finished tonight's trip to the Forbidden Forest and were on their way back. I really hope you can come and stay with me every day. As he was about to leave the Forbidden Forest, Hagrid let out a sigh. Argus smiled. If I am in solitary confinement every day, Professor Snape will cause trouble for me. That was not what I meant. I know, I will spend more time with you when I have time. Just as the two were about to leave, there was a sudden burst of footsteps behind them. It's very urgent, and it doesn't look like an ordinary creature. Hagrid almost instantly protected Yagus behind him, and Yagus also took out his wand and stood ready. The figure gradually emerged. The upper body of a human being has 4 horse hooves. It's you, Firenze. Hagrid breathed a sigh of relief and patted Yagus on the shoulder, telling him to relax. Introduction, this is Argus Grindelwald, my friend. Hello, little wizard. Firenze was one of the few centaurs who was rational about wizards. He put down the bow and arrow in his hand and said hello to Yagus. By the way, Firenze, why are you here? Don't you usually patrol the depths at this time? Firenze's sapphire eyes stared straight at Yagus. For him, Yagos. Hagrid was puzzled. This is his first time in the Forbidden Forest. Why are you looking for him? The guidance of the stars. Firenze's eyes never moved from the moment he saw Yagus. Yagus looked confused. The stars tell me that a distinguished guest will come to the Forbidden Forest tonight. I've been waiting here for a long time. Astrology. Yagus became interested. Inherited from the blood of Grindelwald, his left eye is the same as Gellert Grindelwald. They are all prophetic eyes that can predict the future. Unfortunately, he cannot see into the future decades later like Grindelwald. At most, you can see the scene a few seconds later. It will also consume a lot of energy and magic power. In severe cases, you may even be unable to get out of bed for a day or two. In comparison, the horoscopes that are also prophecies appear to be much gentler. Although it is not as detailed and convenient as the eye of prophecy, it may not be impossible to draw parallels. Did the stars only see me coming? Of course not. Firenze took 2 quick steps, his long platinum hair flowing in the wind. If you ignore the horse hoof that fell off the lower half of his body, he is definitely a handsome guy who is no less handsome than you readers. Through the stars, I saw that the fate of the centaurs was about to change. If Mr. Grindelwald is willing, please allow me to take you to the place where centaurs and unicorns live. There I will tell you all about the prophecy. A place where centaurs and unicorns live. Before Yagus could say anything, Hagrid screamed. Rubbing his palms together, he smiled innocently. Unicorn gathering place. Oh my god, I can't believe that a human wizard can touch such a beautiful little guy at once. Firenze, can you take me with you? You know, I've always liked unicorns. I'm sorry, Hagrid. Firenze shook his head. The centaurs have never welcomed other intelligent races, including giants. If I have the chance, I will introduce you to some unicorns. Mr. Grindelwald, please follow me. Whoosh. Before Firenze finished speaking, an arrow came from afar. Directly between Firenze and Yagus. Firenze, you traitor. Immediately afterwards, a red-haired and red-bearded centaur appeared in front of everyone holding a bow and arrow, pointing directly in the direction of Firenze and Yagus. His eyes were filled with anger. The centaurs do not welcome wizards. Firenze, not only do you tell him the prophecy, but you also take him to the settlement. I must tell the tribe and ask them to expel you from the Forbidden Forest. Mr. Centaur, I advise you to put away your bow and arrows. Yagus' tone was calm, but there was a cold light in his eyes. Get away, little pony. You are not welcome in the Forbidden Forest. The red-bearded centaur kicked the ground twice, raising a large amount of dust. He obviously didn't have Ferenzi's sense of reason, and he would make a demonstration gesture if something didn't go his way. Expelliarmus. The moment Yagas saw the arrow, he held the wand in his hand. The disarming curse was shot without hesitation. Boom. Level 6 Expelliarmus is already at a level that many elite Aurors may not be able to reach. As soon as the shot went down, the red-bearded centaur seemed to be hit by a missile. It hit the tree behind him hard. The bow and arrow in his hand followed the sawdust, and the whole person vomited blood. A dent can be clearly seen on the chest. Mr. Grindelwald, please wait a moment. Ronan, he didn't mean to attack you. Firenze obviously did not expect Yagas to act so decisively, nor did he expect Yagas to deal with Ronan so easily. By the time he reacted, Ronan had already fallen in front of him. Hagrid was also dumbfounded. In his impression, Yagas should be the kind of nice gentleman. The sudden contrast caused his brain to shut down for a moment. When he woke up, he immediately held Yagas's shoulders from behind. Calm down, Yagas. He just wanted to scare you, don't be so nervous. I didn't want to kill him, I just wanted to teach him a lesson. Yagas explained to Hagrid expressionlessly, then turned to look at Firenze. Mr. Firenze, it seems that I have no chance to listen to your prediction. Whenever you unify the opinions of the Centaur's tribe, you can invite me to be your guest again. After saying that, he turned around and left. Hagrid looked at Firenze, then at Yagas, and hesitated. Firenze, his injury. I'll take care of it. That's good. I'm going to take Yagas back to the dormitory first. If anything happens, Yaya can call me. Under Firenze's gaze, Yagas' figure slowly disappeared. Don't touch me, Centaur traitor. Ronan struggled in Firenze's arms. Firenze took out the white fresh food he brought with him and applied it to his wound. You know, he is the one in the prophecy. But he is a wizard. How can the centaurs place their hopes on a wizard? Ronan was so excited that he almost coughed up another mouthful of blood by accident. This is the guide of destiny and has nothing to do with race. No matter what you say, I will never obey the orders of a human wizard. Return to Hogwarts Castle. Yagas regretted not having a late-night snack at Hagrid's place. Thinking of being caught while wandering at night last night, he decided to endure it. The worst thing is to go have breakfast early tomorrow morning. As soon as I walked into the castle gate, a system prompt came in my mind. Congratulations to the host for completing the first Forbidden Forest patrol and obtaining the achievement, Forbidden Forest Guard. Achievement point reward, 50. Better than nothing, better than nothing. Argus made his way back to the Slytherin common room. Draco was standing on the high platform in the lounge like a hero, bragging about how he fought against the evil Weasley in flying lessons. Seeing Yagas, he didn't blush at all. How to blow, how to blow. Okay, young man. Throwing it down on the grass will toughen your skin. Yagas smiled and shook his head. He did not reveal the vanity hobby of a young man. When I returned to my dormitory, I felt exhausted from 2 consecutive days. Without even taking off his clothes, Yagas fell into a deep sleep. I was still in a daze until I came to the lobby for breakfast the next morning. Agus, did you not sleep well last night? Draco came with 2 followers, Goyle and Crabbe. Seeing the faint dark circles under Yagas' eye bags, he opened his mouth to comfort him. You're lucky today. The first class in the morning is Defense Against the Dark Arts. Professor Quirrell's lectures are more boring than Professor Binz's History of Magic, and he never cares what you do in the classroom. What class did you say was the first class in the morning? What happened to Professor Quirrell's Defense Against the Dark Arts class? Gone. Hearing Quirrell's name, Yagas's brain immediately sobered up. I just escaped from him, and only 1 day later, I have to meet him again. He didn't dare to forget that there was a big boss waiting for him on the back of Quirrell's head. Agus, are you sick? Why do you look so ugly? Draco, if I told Professor Snape now that I was afraid of heights during my flying lesson yesterday, do you think he would believe it? Or maybe I caught a cold last night. Or being scared by animals in the Forbidden Forest. The next second, a gloomy voice sounded behind Yagas. Or, get your head screwed off by your dean. Yagos, why are you sitting in the back row? It goes without saying that Professor Quirrell only knows how to read from textbooks, and he can't even read textbooks. Who wants to listen? I really don't know what Dumbledore was thinking, why he hired a loser to be our defense against the dark arts teacher. Yagus listened to the discussions of the classmates around him and did not explain anything. Sitting silently in the back row, he picked up a book and put it in front of himself. He knew that Quirrell was definitely not as simple as he appeared in class. An outstanding student from Ravenclaw, he has a strong desire to explore magic and dares to go for a walk in the dark forest alone. If he was really worthless, Voldemort would not have chosen him as his parasite. Hogwarts's cowardice was nothing more than a cover-up for him and a drag on Voldemort. In the classroom, without Yagus taking the lead, and Quirrell's own reputation among students is not very good. The first few rows were like public classes in a university, not even a single person could be seen. Students can squeeze in as far as they can, and students who come late can only sit in the middle while cursing. A strong smell of garlic heralded Quirrell's arrival. The classroom was suddenly filled with coughs. Quirrell smiled awkwardly and walked to the podium. Come, students, please take out our textbook, the Black Magic Self-Defense Guide. Turn to the first page. What we are going to talk about today is wrong. I was stumbling over just a few sentences, wasting dozens of seconds of class time. As for the rest of the story, it's even more boring. It is obvious that Pujangrong is just a harmless magical animal rated as Class 20 by the Ministry of Magic, and is basically harmless to wizards. If you want to expel them, you can't even use magic. Some wizarding families even keep them as pets. But it is such a simple content, but Quirrell talks about it with a hammer on the left and a mallet on the right. It's all about what's in the textbook, and it's so confusing. Originally, Yagus was still confused. Even if he just followed the instructions, there wouldn't be no one attending the lecture. Now I finally understand. Why is he not willing to listen? Why can't he find any part of the book he is reading? While Quirrell was reading the textbook, he tried asking the students a few questions, but found that no one paid any attention to him. There was a hint of embarrassment on his face. Give me your body. A hoarse voice sounded in Quirrell's head, and then, an irresistible force hit him. Quirrell's eyes changed. No longer standing blankly in the middle of the podium reading textbooks like before, he was walking around among the students with interest. Yagus, who had been observing secretly, was shocked. He buried his head lower, for fear of attracting Quirrell's attention. At this moment, Voldemort closed the book in his hand. Click. The sound was not loud, but it attracted everyone's attention. If you feel that studying textbooks is too boring, we might as well try a new learning method. Voldemort took out his wand and enjoyed the attention of countless students. He has wanted to be a defense against the dark arts teacher for a long time, but unfortunately he has been rejected by Dumbledore. Until he started the Wizarding War. I thought I would never get another chance, and I never thought it would happen with Quirrell. Please put down your textbooks and take out your wands. Voldemort just waved his wand, and everyone's textbooks were instantly closed and pushed aside. The magical scene caused the little wizard to exclaim. Voldemort was very satisfied with everyone's reaction, and the way he kept moving didn't look like he was giving a lecture. It's like giving a speech on stage. If you want to learn Defense Against the Dark Arts course, you must first understand what black magic is. Several students were attracted by his previous magic. When they heard the question, they immediately raised their hands. Voldemort smiled. You don't need to raise your hands in my class. You can say whatever you want. Black magic is magic that can cause harm to people. Magic without counter curses is black magic. What dark wizards use is black magic? Most young wizards do not have accurate concepts about black magic and simply answer according to their own inner thoughts. Mr. Grindelwald, what do you think? After Voldemort reviewed the answers of several young wizards in turn, he suddenly threw the question to Argus. Yagus narrowed his eyes slightly and was about to talk casually. But then I heard Voldemort speak again. With Mr. Grindelwald's knowledge, he will definitely be able to give us a perfect answer. I don't think you can refuse this opportunity to add points to your college, right? Seeing Voldemort's half-smiling expression, Argus cursed in his heart. Old fox. Use the academy to suppress me. A simple provocation method, directly putting Yagus on the fire. In the past classes, Argus had demonstrated his profound knowledge more than once. If he answered casually, it would obviously make other Slytherin students think that he was fooling and that he was someone who didn't care about the honor of the academy. This will be a fatal blow to his image. He stood up and thought for a moment. The judgment of black magic should depend on whether the magician who casts the spell has strong malice. For example, Yagus picked up his wand and pointed it at the podium. Clear spring-like water. Several streams of water came out in response, falling directly at Voldemort's feet. Clear springs are like water, which many people think is just a life curse. But if the water flow continues to expand until it rises enough to submerge a person's body, it can also kill the wizard. Therefore, I believe that any magic that is released with strong malice can be called black magic. Unique opinion. A hint of praise flashed in Voldemort's eyes. In his expectation, the answer given by Yagus should be a summary of the previous students, plus some textbook knowledge. Unexpectedly, Yagus gave him such a big surprise. Even he only had this understanding in the 3rd grade. Mr. Grindelwald, please sit down. 5 points to Slytherin for your perfect answer. He flicked his cuffs, and the water stains on the ground disappeared completely. The superb silent and wandless spellcasting has once again attracted discussion among young wizards. As Mr. Grindelwald said, magic that can cause harm to people or has no counter curse is not called black magic. Any magic can be used to kill people as long as it is done with strong malice. Of course, in the eyes of most people, dark magic is mainly divided into 3 types, Mr. Grindelwald. The 3 types of black magic are mainly jinxes, poisonous curses, and curses. Among them, curses are the most evil, jinxes are the lightest, and poisonous curses are in between. Yagus answered calmly. Very good. Voldemort nodded, his tone suddenly becoming cold. But you missed one of them, that is, the unforgivable curse. He turned his head and looked sharply at Harry. Mr. Potter. Please tell me, what kind of curses are called the unforgivable curses? Years of planning and struggle finally fell into the trap of a newborn child. How could the pretentious Voldemort accept this? Being able to hold back and not take action was the result of his utmost restraint. Harry stood up in confusion, not knowing why he would throw the question at a novice like himself. Little did he know that he was already on the verge of death. Looking at the defense against the dark arts professor with a frosty look on his face, for some reason, he always felt like he was seeing Snape. After a twist of fate that had never been used in his brain, Harry spoke weakly. I'm sorry, Professor, I don't know. Don't know. Voldemort was stunned for a moment. You don't even know how your parents died. Is your heart too big? He stared at Harry suspiciously and continued to ask, what is the definition of dark magic? I don't know, Professor. How many types of spells are there? Have no idea. What are the necessary conditions to release the spell? No. Don't know. Harry kept shaking his head, shaking Voldemort almost stupidly. He couldn't believe that he would lose to a little kid who didn't have any knowledge about magic. Voldemort could accept losing to a powerful legendary wizard like Dumbledore, or he could accept losing to a Dark Lord like Grindelwald who was sweeping across Europe. He could even accept his defeat to a talented wizard like Yagus. But what is this thing in front of me? What you can't do is what you can't do, and what you ask is what you can't do. It would be a lifelong shame for him to die at the hands of such a person. Argus looked at Voldemort's doubtful expression and tried his best to lower his head to prevent him from seeing the smile on his face. How much magic do you expect someone who has lived in the Muggle world to know? If he hadn't heard some information from Hagrid and Ron, he might not have even known anyone in the magic world. In fact, the main reason for Voldemort's rage was that he had not collected any information about Harry. Since he was hit by his own death curse, the main soul has been living in rats, reptiles and other creatures. Even if he parasitizes Quirrell later, he only thinks about how to resurrect. I don't have the time to care about Harry's affairs. Moreover, in his understanding, Harry, as a pure-blood wizard, was the savior of the wizarding world and the heir to the Potter family. Dumbledore will definitely take good care of him. It is not impossible to accept him as a personal disciple. Now I don't know what to ask, there is only one situation. It's just that Harry can't hold up the wall with mud. He just idles around all day, eating and waiting to die. Voldemort tried his best to suppress the anger that was rising up in him, and gritted his teeth and said to Harry. Mr. Potter, 5 points from Gryffindor for your ignorance. Sit down. Harry felt aggrieved and didn't know what he had done wrong. It feels like since I arrived at Hogwarts, everyone is targeting me. Voldemort was also suffocating because of Harry. Although the class continued, it was obvious that he was not in the same mood as before. He reluctantly finished the class and stopped Yagus, who was about to leave. Mr. Grindelwald, please wait a moment. Argus looked at Voldemort warily and waved his hand, signaling Draco and others not to wait for him. Voldemort's methods were definitely not something that young wizards like them who had just entered school could resist. They are the core strength of their future, and it is impossible to put them in danger. Professor Quirrell, what can I do? Yagus asked politely. I remember I said 2 days ago that we would meet again. This time, are you going to refuse my invitation? Seeing Argus's hesitation, Voldemort turned his attention to Draco and others not far away. The eyes are full of meaning. Alternatively, you can call Malfoy and Mr. Not to join you. With how curious they are about magic, they will definitely accept it happily. Threat. Hongugwo's threat. Voldemort's meaning was obvious. Come with me, or I'll fool Draco and the others. It's impossible for them to have occlumency protection like you. Argus was filled with hatred, but he didn't dare to risk Draco and the others. Smiling and bowing. It is an honor for me to be invited by the professor. Follow Voldemort all the way to Quirrell's office. Mr. Grindelwald, with your wisdom, you must have guessed something. Without the obstruction of others, Voldemort no longer cared. Strongly display the style of the Dark Lord. The way he looked at Yagus was like looking at some kind of prey, with a certain determination to win. Argus didn't want to reveal his innate advantage of knowing the plot, so he acted with Voldemort. You're not Professor Quirrell, who are you? Introduce yourself. My name is Tom Riddle, you can also call me by another name. Voldemort. Yagus did not show any shock at the answer he had known for a long time. Look at each other calmly. I read it right. You are one of the few people who hear my name without fear. Voldemort was surprised by Argus's character. But when I thought of the other party's identity, it became clear immediately. As the son of the Dark Lord, how could he be afraid of another Dark Lord? So, you called me here just to tell me your identity? Of course not. Voldemort sat on the chair and looked up at Argus. Mr. Grindelwald, with the blood of the Dark Lord on your back, do you just want to stay in Hogwarts and play wizard games with those mudbloods? Submit to me and offer your loyalty. I will take you to the top of the world. Argus said nothing and looked at Voldemort quietly. When Voldemort revealed his identity to him, he had already guessed what the other person was going to say. Whether it's his own talent or the Saints group, they are both coveted by Voldemort. It is normal for the other party to have plans to recruit him. It's a pity that he doesn't like it. The night before yesterday, he and Voldemort were in a deserted corridor, and few people knew his movements. If Voldemort took action at that time, there was really nothing he could do. But now, at least dozens of people know that he is coming to Quirrell's office, and he doesn't believe that Voldemort dares to take action. As for the Imperious Curse, he must also have that ability. Occlumency is also effective against magic that invades the brain, such as the Soul Impering Curse, not to mention that the opponent is currently in a state of half-death. Use a hammer to seize souls. Mr. Voldemort, my loyalty cannot be gained by you with just a few words. No matter how you look at it, my situation and the situation of the Saints are much better than you and your Death Eaters. Isn't it? Voldemort was not angry at Argus' words. Even though he became cruel and bloodthirsty because of making Horcruxes, as a leader who could afford to form a huge organization like the Death Eaters, his character was unparalleled. It's not that he can't control many things. I just don't want to. He stood up and looked directly at Yagus. Mr. Grindelwald, you know very well that everything about the Saints is based on your father. But how long can he live? 3 years? 5 years? I always knew that my father's death would happen sooner or later, just like. A glint of blue flashed across Argus's eyes at some point, interrupting Voldemort's words. The next second, the red light lit up. Expelliarmus. It's like I know you're going to attack me. The famous wave scene like in the Harry Potter movies or Dragon Ball did not happen. The moment Argus took action, Voldemort also threw a disarming spell. Easily defeat the curse of Argus. All petrified. Split into pieces. Come quickly. Lumos. Yagus encountered many assassins when he was in Austria, although most of them were solved by Vita and others. But I have also accumulated some life and death fighting experience. The curse was thrown at Voldemort as if it was free of charge. Compared to Argus's efforts, Voldemort acted lightly. The admiration in his eyes could not be stopped no matter what. He could feel that the strength and timing of release of Yagus's spell were far beyond what an 11-year-old child could possess. What's more important is that in battle, Yagus's control and coordination of the timing of magic spells are still improving at a speed visible to the naked eye. The black magic knowledge he just learned in class was gradually understood by him during the battle. Expelliarmus. As time passed, Argus's magic began to weaken, and Voldemort knocked Argus's wand away with a disarming spell. Mr. Grindelwald, I have to admit that you are the most talented young man I have ever seen. Not only your magic, but also your control over people's hearts. Are you so sure that I won't kill you? Argus picked up the wand slowly, without any panic. This is Hogwarts. You won't give up the chance to be resurrected just to kill me. Moreover, only a living Grindelwald will bring you greater benefits. Voldemort laughed loudly. You are smarter than I thought. Mr. Grindelwald, your wisdom has given you another choice. Be my disciple. With the reputation of 2 generations of Dark Lords on your back, you will surely become the master of the magical world in the future. To Voldemort's surprise, Argus was not as excited as he imagined. He just glanced at him lightly. Mr. Voldemort, there's no need to say anything about being a wolf with nothing. If you want to be my teacher, you must at least have a decent gift, right? Voldemort's wand flicked. The office that had just been shattered by the fight between the 2 men was restored to new condition. A thick notebook flew out of a drawer not far away. Dropped on the table. Yagus picked up the note, glanced at it, and couldn't take it anymore. The content is mysterious and the ideas are strange. Even though Argus has studied with Grindelwald for many years, he can't help but be amazed by it. These are some notes I compiled during this time. It's a gift for you. Yagus bowed respectfully. Thank you for your gift. Teacher. Voldemort smiled, smiling so heartily for the first time. From today on, Death Eater welcomes his second master. Come to Quirrell's office every Saturday afternoon from now on. I will personally teach you what true black magic is. Teacher. Argus was not particularly averse to becoming Voldemort's disciple. No matter how bottomless Voldemort was and how unscrupulous he was. The knowledge and powerful magic in his head cannot be faked. Want to do something for him? Great. Give me magic knowledge in exchange. With Yagus' ability to understand the plot well, it is not difficult to fool Voldemort, who is in a parasitic state. After exchanging knowledge about magic with Voldemort, Argus saw that it was almost time, said a brief farewell and planned to leave. Voldemort spoke quietly. Next time we meet, I hope you can bring some information about Mr. Potter and the 3rd floor of Hogwarts. You'll get it, Sensei. After Yagus left, Quirrell seemed to have been drained of all his energy, and his whole body was exhausted. Sweating like rain, he stumbled to the bedside and took out a bottle of magic potion from under the pillow. It wasn't until he drank it all that his expression softened slightly. Lord. Master, Argus is not trustworthy. Why, do you want to identify yourself to him? What if he tells Dumbledore? No. Voldemort's tone was determined and extremely confident. He is a smart man. I knew from the first moment I saw him that he would not settle for the status quo. It is impossible for Dumbledore to trust a Grindelwald, and similarly, Grindelwald will never cooperate with Dumbledore. It's easier for a newbie to act than for you who are already under suspicion. My disciple's control over people's hearts is a true inheritance from his father. With a few tricks, he can lure countless people to take risks on the 3rd floor. But we don't have the means to control him. Quirrell was still a little worried. Perhaps because Voldemort had achieved his goal and was in a good mood, Quirrell was not punished as usual for asking. Do you think the notes I gave him are really that simple? I said that he is a smart person. The biggest flaw of a smart person is self-confidence. The erosion of evil thoughts by black magic is not something that a young wizard like him who has just entered school can withstand. Back in the dormitory, Yagus heard a system prompt in his head. Congratulations to the host for becoming a disciple of Voldemort and obtaining the achievement, Legacy of Death Eaters. Achievement Point Reward. 100. Congratulations to the host for receiving the teachings of Voldemort and Grindelwald and achieving the achievement, Future Dark Lord. Achievement Point Reward. 200. Congratulations to the host for becoming a Death Eater and the heir of a saint, and obtaining the achievement, Fear Sweeping the Magical World. Achievement Point Reward. 200. Current remaining achievement points, 600. 600 points is quite a lot. Let's have a 5-round draw. System, I want to draw a lottery. Familiar card packs appear, just click on a few. Accompanied by dazzling, blue sky and white clouds. A purple light slowly emerged. Congratulations to the host for obtaining. Repair as before, Level 2, Front Teeth Matching Stick, Level 3, Flying Sand and Rocks, Level 2, All Curses End, Level 3. Congratulations to the host for obtaining. Transformation, Level 5. Yo-ho. I've given you a lot of good things this time. Yagus also didn't expect that with just a random draw, he would produce a complex magic that would end all spells. I remember that Nico Flamel led a large group of people to use 10,000 curses to stop the fire that my father caused in Paris. For most magic spells, even black magic, 10,000 curses has a strong ability to restrain itself. Not to mention transfiguration, almost every wizard cannot do without it from the time he comes into contact with magic to the time he dies. It seems simple, but in fact it is easy to learn but difficult to master. In actual combat, it is extremely difficult for a real transformation master to deal with it. The weird transformation can even make every piece of clothing and thread on your body become a weapon for attack. It's not an exaggeration to say it's purple compared to most golden rewards. It's a big profit. It's really a big profit this time. Current remaining achievement points, 100. It is detected that the host has mastered some magic spells. Do you want to choose fusion? Merge. Magic knowledge is integrated into the brain, and Yagus seems to have transformed into a magic master, personally experiencing every bit of their learning and research of magic. The host has excellent talent and has a super magic level understanding. Repaired as new, Level 3, Front Teeth as Big as Sticks, Level 4. Yagus took out his wand and pointed at the table not far away. As magic surges, the wooden table gradually transforms into an iron basin. The iron basin floated up and fell to the ground hard, making a clanging sound. A smile appeared in Yagus's eyes. The essential transformation has finally been completed. Transform the iron basin back into a wooden table. Argus took out the notes Voldemort had given him. Just a few cursory glances in the office made his heart tremble. It's a pity that your thoughts are too obvious. Yagus smiled slightly and activated occlumency. Voldemort's notes are indeed good things, and the knowledge in them is also genuine. But for an 11-year-old wizard like Yagus, these black magics are too advanced. Not to mention not paying attention, even if you concentrate on it, it will be a matter of time before you are occupied by evil thoughts. But what he didn't know was that Yagus's level of occlumency was far higher than he imagined. As long as you don't deliberately study in depth and simply understand the knowledge contained in it, it can be said to be a piece of cake. Even if Argus can't study it himself, there are still Vita, Grindelwald and others. Giving it to them will also be of great use. Immersed in Voldemort's notes, Argus suddenly woke up until the sky was getting dark. There was a feeling of wonder in my heart. Sure enough, it is not easy for anyone to become the Dark Lord. There wasn't much that Yagus could really learn, but even so, he benefited a lot from one afternoon. The notes analyze the origin of black magic in a simple and in-depth way. Yagus has always had a misunderstanding before, that is, the 3 major types of black magic belong to 3 different categories. But Voldemort put forward a completely different point of view in his notes. Whether it is a jinx, a poison curse or a curse, its essence originates from the evil thoughts of the wizard. The difference lies in the strength of the evil thoughts. For example, the front teeth are racing against sticks, and the grinning mouth is a small evil curse, but in fact it is a weakened or decomposed version of many curses. Many seemingly unrelated spells, through Voldemort's explanation and fusion, actually became the underlying foundation of a large number of complex black magic. It's getting late, let's go get something to eat first. We have to go to the Forbidden Forest for confinement later. Yagus closed his eyes and cleared away the evil thoughts that were eroding his brain. Thinking back to the conversation with Voldemort that morning. From Voldemort's words, we can know that he should have guessed the hiding place of the Sorcerer's Stone. I did not act rashly because I was worried that if the action failed to succeed, I would be alerted. So you have to go there in advance to get information. Unfortunately, Yagus, who was familiar with the plot, already knew what was hidden inside and had no intention of taking any risks. Just wait until next week to see Voldemort and briefly reveal Lu Wei's existence. The existence of the three-headed dog is sold once, and the reason for the three-headed dog is sold once. Maybe the method of dealing with the three-headed dog can be sold again. A piece of information was sold for 3 prices, and this transaction made a lot of money. As for Voldemort's resurrection, that's what Dumbledore has to worry about. Even in the original work, Dumbledore knew Voldemort's plan, and revealing the information himself was just to speed up the process. A remnant soul cannot make waves. After dinner, follow Hagrid to the Forbidden Forest. The journey was uneventful. In the next few days, the peaceful life made Yagus feel more relaxed than ever. On the last day of confinement, Yagus received a letter from Vita Rosier. The letter informed that she had acquired several shops in good locations in Diagon Alley and could open them at any time. Other than that, there is no other information. For most wizards, owl messaging is not the best option. Especially some important information is too easy to leak. Vita knew the situation of Yagus and did not dare to express the saint's current situation in the letter. Prepare to find a suitable time and place, and then discuss the next step with him. The same goes for Argos. After learning that the location of the store had been selected, I plan to talk to Hagrid about purchasing magical animal materials in the Forbidden Forest at night. Late at night, the patrol with Hagrid was completed, and the two walked to the edge of the Forbidden Forest. Yagus spoke. Hagrid, if you have time in the past 2 days, you can pack up the materials you want to sell. When the time comes, I will directly use the Traceless extension spell to take the things away, saving you a trip back and forth. Ah, you really want to acquire it? I thought. A trace of surprise appeared on Hagrid's face. Thought I was joking with you. Yagus said helplessly. I haven't mentioned this matter to you in the past 2 days. There are still some things that need to be dealt with in the store. Rather than letting you work hard for a long time and not knowing where to send it, it is better to leave it in the hands of you, the master of magical animals. Your maintenance methods are much better than those of so-called scholars. Yagus boasted. Obviously he wanted to find a free scapegoat, and someone would be responsible for any problems with the materials. He said it as if he had great trust in Hagrid. Through Hagrid's beard, you can clearly see his face flushed with shame. Scratching his head. I'm sorry, Yagus, I shouldn't have doubted my friend. It's okay. I'm only 11 years old. It's normal to have concerns when discussing a large deal with a young wizard like me. I forgot that you are only 11 years old. Sometimes I feel like I am talking to an adult wizard. Hagrid sighed. Argus, I suggest you communicate more with Harry and his peers. The young wizard is too mature and can easily lose the joy of childhood. I will think about it. The next day. Although Yagus went to bed late last night, his biological clock still told him to get up early. When he was in Austria, Vita would urge him to do morning exercises every day. At first Argus didn't take it seriously, thinking that wizards only needed to focus on magic. It wasn't until he was practicing magic with Vita that he discovered that even if the opponent didn't use magic to counterattack and only relied on physical movement, he could still be helpless. Only then did he understand that for a wizard, the body is as important as magic. Even if he is as strong as Dumbledore, he cannot escape the constraints of his body. Since then, except for some special circumstances that made him unable to get out of bed, Yagus has been exercising almost without stopping. After one day of class, Yagus discovered a problem. The space in the dormitory is too small, so it's okay to read books or something. If you want to practice magic, I'm afraid you're going to make quite a fuss. It seems that if you want to practice magic, you'd better go to the Room of Requirement. Argus remembers a legendary place in Hogwarts Castle. The room that responds to requests is also called the room that comes and goes. Legend has it that it comes and goes, and one can only enter when one really needs it. It will be arranged according to the needs of visitors, and even the Marauder's map cannot be displayed. If you go there to practice, you don't have to worry about others finding out. Just do it. Argus put the notes Voldemort had given him into his arms, and based on the characteristics of the room of requirement in his memory, he found the tapestry, Troll beats Barnabas with a stick, on the 8th floor of Hogwarts Castle. After making sure that no one saw him on the road, Yagus thought silently. I need a place to practice my magic. Opposite the tapestry, a very smooth door suddenly appeared in front of Yagus. There are no signs. Hogwarts really does hide a lot of secrets. With this place, you no longer have to hide when you practice magic or do any experiments you want to do. Yagus chuckled. Push the door open and enter. Look around. Yagus found that this was a room with a strong wizarding style. There were not only the puppets needed to practice magic, but also all kinds of strange things that he had never seen before. This made him curious, and he touched various things that appeared with his hands. He has followed Grindelwald for many years and has seen many magical items. But in this room of response to requirements, he could only see that the traceless extension spell was cast here. And it is much more profound than the one commonly used by modern wizards. Interesting. In the past, he didn't think highly of ancient magic. In his understanding, if ancient magic is really powerful, it will not be replaced by modern magic. Now it seems that ancient magic is not as simple as he imagined. But he wasn't particularly bothered about it. Argus knew how much he weighed. For wizards of Dumbledore and Voldemort's caliber, he was equivalent to a young model under the wealthy man. Play with it however you want. What Dumbledore couldn't figure out after spending decades at Hogwarts, can he understand it just by looking at it? Do you look down on the previous generation of protagonists in the wizarding world too much? He didn't know how long he stayed in the room of requirement, but when he walked out, torches were already lit up everywhere in the castle. Back in the Slytherin common room, Draco was talking to Goyle and Crabbe. As soon as he saw Argus coming back, Draco's eyes immediately lit up. Yagus, where have you been today? I've been looking for you in the library and dormitory for a long time but couldn't find you. During this period, Yagus's life was extremely regular, basically consisting of classroom, hall, and library. Not finding him in these places, Draco couldn't help but feel a little strange. I found a place outside to practice some magic, and I forgot to congratulate you for becoming the youngest Seeker in Slytherin. Upon hearing this, Draco immediately became proud. Just wait and see, I will definitely lead Slytherin to win the Quidditch championship this year. Why are you taking Goyle and Crabbe here with you if you don't sleep at night? Yagus sat on the sofa and poured himself a cup of tea. The room of requirement is great, but I can't get anything to eat or drink. Not that Weasley. Weasley. You mean Ron. In the peaceful life these days, Yagus almost forgot about him. It's him. Draco looked angry. You don't know, at noon today, in order to reward me for joining the Slytherin team, my father specially gave me a Nimbus 2000. Weasley happened to be discharged from the hospital. When he saw my broomstick, he kept saying that the Slytherin team wanted to take me in because they liked my broomstick. Yagus became interested. So you guys started fighting. If he remembered correctly, the one who obtained Nimbus 2000 in the original book should be Harry. It was a gift given to him by Professor McGonagall after recommending him to the Gryffindor team. But in the last flying lesson, since Neville was away, it was Ron who started the trouble, and Harry didn't have much room to show off. Although he still entered the Gryffindor team, he took advantage of Draco. Draco grabbed the book and caught Marcus's eye, becoming Slytherin's youngest Seeker. With Draco's precedent and Harry's extraordinary talent, would reluctantly agreed to let him enter the Gryffindor team. As a backup Seeker. Compared with the scenery in the original work, it is a far cry from it. Facing Argus' question, Draco shook his head. No, I'm not stupid enough to do it in public. I asked Weasley for a duel tonight. I originally wanted to find you as my assistant, but I couldn't find one, so I decided to ask Goyle to join me. Now that you're here, let's see how Weasley fights with me. With the support of Yagus, Draco is full of confidence. It is no exaggeration to say that based on the level of Ron and Harry, both of them together could not touch a hair of Argus. What time did you agree on? To be honest, Argus is really not interested in wizard duel games like Draco. I didn't want to agree, but I thought about Draco's desperate behavior to help her in the flying lesson, and the number of times he begged me was not that many. If you shirk it, I'm afraid it will hurt his heart. In addition, the agreement between himself and Voldemort should be fake. If you don't take any action at all, just tell Voldemort the answer. What would Voldemort think? Good guy, what I have been thinking about for a long time, but I dare not take action. You just do it in the blink of an eye. What Yagus will receive then is not praise, but fear. This is extremely detrimental to his hiding. At least he had to show off, so that even if he asked him where he got the information later, he would be able to deal with it. Draco was extremely excited after receiving a positive reply, and couldn't help but gear up, as if he was already imagining how he would teach the hateful Weasley a lesson. Tonight at 11:30. In the prize room. It's 11:30, there's still some time. Yagus sighed. It was the middle of the night again, and the routine that I had finally adjusted to was about to be disrupted again. For a teenager who is only 11 years old, sleep quality is still very important. Time passed by and came to the agreed time of 11:30. For pure-blood nobles, dueling is a noble thing. Especially among people with a loud mouth like Draco, it is promoted as an extremely sacred act. What should have been done secretly was now made known to almost everyone in Slytherin. Even when Argus went out with Draco, there were a lot of little wizards cheering for them. Draco, if your head wasn't stuffed with splendens, you should know the consequences of being caught wandering at night. When Argus saw this scene, he was so angry that he wanted to slap Draco twice. The confinement here has just ended, and I haven't had time to take a breath. Are you sending me in again? You really want me to go into the woods with a burly man? Draco knew he was in the wrong, so he looked at Yagus angrily and didn't dare to say a word. Yagus said nothing more. Draco has changed a lot under his training, but this problem of love can never be changed. It still takes a long time, so I will change it slowly in the future. I knew the evil Malfoy would only put on such airs. If you talk so harshly, you might be so scared that you pee your pants. In the prize display room, Ron chattered endlessly. Malfoy and Grindelwald, a Death Eater and a Saint, are all dark wizards. Don't worry, Ron, I will help you. In just a few days, Harry was brainwashed by Ron and learned Gryffindor's recklessness. Mr. Weasley, it's not a good habit to speak ill of people behind their backs. It seems that you forgot that Mrs. Hooch brought you to the Slytherin lounge to apologize a few days ago. Before Argus and Malfoy walked in, they heard Ron chattering behind them. Although he had expected it, Argus still felt sick when he saw Harry standing next to Ron. Two of your friends are quarreling and dueling, but instead of trying to reconcile, you help the other one to sideline the other. As expected of you, Holy Mother Harry. I will help whoever is weak. Argus's contact with Harry did have other thoughts. Even if Harry was colder towards him, he would understand. But not Draco. From the moment I met Harry, I truly regarded Harry as my good friend. Now, the other party actually wants to fight me for another person. Or when the other party provokes you. Just thinking about it gives me chills. Sensing Draco's disappointed and questioning gaze, Harry lowered his head guiltily. Draco, listen to my explanation, Ron. Mr. Potter, your actions have told us our choice. Yagus' expression was indescribably cold, and there was alienation in his sky-blue pupils. You should know that when you stand here, you choose the opposite of Draco. Harry hesitated, wanting to say something but not knowing how to say it. Ron couldn't hold it any longer. Since he was discharged from the hospital, Inigo's has suffered countless ostracism and cold-blooded attacks. Now that he saw Yagus, he was even more jealous. He couldn't tolerate the other party to continue to talk nonsense in front of him. He took out his wand, not even intending to follow the duel etiquette. A magic spell shot over. The front teeth matched the stick. Yagus was unwilling to hide from the twisted curse. How well done, Mr. Weasley, for sneaking in the duel before it even started. No wonder I made a mistake and asked my brothers to help wipe my butt. Shut up. You disgusting dark wizard. Ron was like a mouse whose tail had been stepped on, picking up the wand and waving it at Yagus. It's a pity that he knows too little magic. They eat, drink and have fun every day at home. Without Hermione's supervision at school, he and Harry would rather not even go to class. It was those magic spells that went back and forth, and sometimes I even chanted them so hard that I almost hit myself. The golden bell upside down. Yagus was too lazy to continue playing this house game and directly hung Ron in the air. Seeing Ron writhing like a living maggot, Holy Mother Harry couldn't bear it again. Yagos. Harry, are you going to plead for Weasley? This time, Draco couldn't bear it anymore and asked directly. You don't know what he said to Yagus back then, and what he said in the hall, right? When Ron attacked Yagus just now, I didn't see you begging for mercy. In your heart, is this Weasley the only friend? Who are Argus and me? No wonder I spent so many years fighting against Harry and Draco in my previous life. Just looking at Draco's questioning, it looks like a couple quarreling and breaking up. Ever since the last time in the hospital room, when Harry begged Argus for mercy regardless of the reason, Argus had been completely disappointed with this savior who was overflowing with the heart of the Holy Mother. Regarding Harry's repeated pleas for mercy, he felt no emotion at all. Harry held it in for a long time and could only manage to say one sentence. You are all my friends. Ron he just. Shut up. Pote. Draco, filled with love and hatred, took out his wand and pointed it at Harry. You made your choice when you accompanied Weasley to the prize display room. Let's do it. Pote, don't let me look down on you. Harry still wanted to explain, but when he saw Draco above him, he decided to let him calm down and find time to apologize. Grinning and cheering. Tarantella dance. Detention quickly. The education given to heirs by pure blood families was not comparable to that of Harry, who was a dilettante. After being trained by Yagus, Draco's strength far exceeds that of the original. It was almost easy to deal with Harry, who didn't even miss a few spells. Fight back, Pote. You coward. After a few spells, Harry ran away in panic, unable to even fight back. Meow. Draco was venting his anger when a cat meowed at the door. Harry was startled. Draco was also panicked and hurriedly asked Argus what to do. In the eyes of these little wizards, Filch and his cat are nothing less than demons. Whether it was the terrifying figure or the attitude towards the little wizard, they were extremely frightened. As soon as he finished speaking, Draco saw Mrs. Norris rushing into the prize display room. It's over, Filch must be blocking us at the door. Professor Snape is not allowed to pluck out our skins after we return. Draco was on the verge of tears, mentally prepared to be scolded by Snape for a few hours and then put in solitary confinement. Ron became excited. The ridicule of the people around him and the jealousy of Yagus, plus being hung up by Yagus for so long today. His brain has long been swallowed up by resentment. I would rather be caught than let Yagus have an easy time. He twisted his body and yelled at the door desperately. There is someone here, come quickly. Someone is sneaking out at night, come and catch them. This shout not only dumbfounded Draco, but also Harry, who was standing beside him. No, man. How about playing? Don't bother me if you don't care about your life. I'll risk breaking up with my friends and come with you. Are you going to make this happen? Sure enough, Filch outside the door heard the noise and rushed into the house quickly. The heavy footsteps were like a muffled drum, beating on everyone's heart. Just when Draco had fallen into despair, a shocking scene appeared. Mrs. Norris, who was shunned in the eyes of others, actually nestled quietly at the feet of Argus. She grabbed his wizard robe and jumped into his arms. Yagos, it's nothing. I've seen it a few times before. I just gave it some food. Yagus's understatement explanation made several people even more shocked. But what shocked them was far more than that. Seeing Filch walk into the prize display room, Ron's face showed the pleasure of revenge. He yelled at Filch hastily. I'll report them. They violate school rules and go out at night. Catch them quickly. Unexpectedly, Filch did not capture Yagus with a grin as he imagined. What happened next was so shocking that his eyes almost popped out. The gloomy face that had remained motionless for thousands of years actually showed a bit of gentleness the moment he saw Yagus. What made him even more unbelievable was that Filch actually took the initiative to say hello to Yagus. Mr. Grindelwald, long time no see. Long time no see, Mr. Filch. Thank you for the trouble you have to do the night watch every night. This is my job. No, if you hadn't done your duty faithfully every night, Hogwarts would have been in such chaos. Argus's words made Filch's smile grow wider. Make a few thick pleats. By the way, Mr. Filch. Draco and I helped you catch 2 young wizards who were secretly wandering around at night tonight and tied them up inside. Waiting for your processing. Tie. Upon hearing this, Filch's eyes suddenly lit up. Anklets and handcuffs are kept in his office all year round, just in case they are needed one day. It's a pity that the previous professors and principals of Hogwarts have never had anyone's support. Seeing that Yagus understands me so well, my affection for him becomes even stronger. Leave this to me. You and your friends should go back first. Little wizards who don't follow school rules will be punished. Harry and Ron were completely stunned when they saw that Filch ignored both Yagus and walked straight in their direction. Why? It's both a night tour, so why is the difference so big? This is an unspoken rule. It's a PY transaction. I'm not convinced. Ron yelled. You are abusing your power. Why only arrest us? Squib. As soon as this word came out, Filch's expression suddenly changed. But Ron didn't notice it and kept talking. Yagus smiled slightly and lifted his golden bell. Boom. Ron, who had been hanging, fell heavily to the ground. Mr. Filch, I'll leave this to you. Draco and I will leave first. The next day. At the entrance of Hogwarts Castle, Gryffindor's hourglass returns to 0. Harry and Ron were like street rats, spurned by countless Gryffindor members. Unwilling to reconcile, Ron kept explaining to his classmates. The only response he received was the cynicism of his classmates. Why did he only arrest you and not others? Can you look for more reasons from yourself? If you are good at it, practice more. If you can't afford to lose, don't play. What Ron couldn't accept even more was that his parents learned the news. Coming soon from the Burrow. Thanks for watching, please subscribe and support our channel.